You're listening to Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. Here we go. Fade to Black is back. How you doing? All right, let's get this show cracking. That's cracking number one. Welcome, everybody listening. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd. 91 days into the new year. Going by pretty quick. As always, we are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your host, Jimmy Church. And here it goes. Cracking number 2. Let's get it cracking. It's cracking number 2, Keith. As always, big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you couldn't hear me right now. Think about it. All right. Got a great show tonight. Got a bunch of stuff I need to get out of the way first. Of course, birthdays. Today, actor Christopher Meloni is 53 years old. You know what's funny? He's best... You know him from Elliot Stabler on Law & Order Special Victims Unit. But that's not who I think of. I think of the show Oz, where he was just absolutely amazing. And I knew that guy was going to go places. Now we know him as Elliot on Law & Order. But he forever, to me, is an inmate on Oz. Missed that show, by the way. We've got a couple of dead guys' birthdays today. Singer Marvin Gaye, check that out. Born in 1939 and he died in 1984. Still messes with me. And check this out. Ronald Horshack Palillo, born in 1949, died in 2012. And for all of you out there that remember that show, Welcome Back, Kotter, where John Travolta got his start. And looking back to that era, you know, the Happy Days, Welcome Back, Kotter era of television, you know, you think about that. And Horshack is a guy, for all of us in that generation, that we will never, ever forget. Ronald Palillo, 1949, died in 2012. Kind of shocked all of us when he did pass away, by the way. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. YouTube, Facebook, you know what to do. You know the drill. Every night you hear the same thing. Follow, like, and subscribe. All right. Tonight, if we have some time, we will be taking your calls, 323-825-5045. We got a couple of guests tonight. Ken Gerhard, joining us from Texas. Texas or Oklahoma? I think it's Texas. Maybe it's on the border. And that'll be later on in the show, right after I get through with everything today in this in our intro. We'll have Bill Burns. Bill Burns is coming on to join us. We have some unfinished business with Mr. Burns. And he is always a great guy to talk to. Love Bill. And Bill will be joining us shortly. You can email throughout the show. As always, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Pierce the veil of the show producers here. Make it good, and I'll read it on the air. And if you're lucky, I'll write you back. I do. I write back. I usually spend a good hour every night after the show writing back to everybody, and most of the weekends. So I do. If it's good, I write back. So, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You can do it all over the website. You can write me direct, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. The bumper music tonight, Doug Aldrich, as always, except for what you're listening to right now. That's Mark Kovar, Getting Down, on a song that I had written. It's on an album I did a while ago that is all heavy guitars, but he turned it into this. I don't know, but it's cool. I think maybe tomorrow I'll play you the original version, and you tell me what you think. All right. We got a bunch of stuff we've got to go over. We have a new page up at jimmychurchradio.com. All right. It is called Yekra Theater. Go and check it out. Now, what it is, the staff here, myself, and everybody here at Jimmy Church Radio, we went with Yekra, our company that we work with. They did Mirage Men. And we selected a bunch of really cool documentaries and movies that we thought kicked butt for the Fade to Black crowd. And you know who you are. So go over to jimmychurchradio.com and check it out. Check it out. Yekra Theater. And if there's anything out there that you can't find and you think we may have some better luck at it, let us know. Shoot us an email. You know what to do. Tweet, and get it to us, and we'll see if we can get it up there. And also, Jay Widener. Well, you know what? Forget that. I have to erase that. Take that out. I didn't say that. Tomorrow night, we will have on John Major Jenkins. That's right. Now, John Major Jenkins is, on the face of this earth, knows more about the Mayan prophecies, calendars, and what did and didn't happen in 2012. December 2012, to be specific. And we got him to come on the show. And we're going to talk about what didn't happen, what was supposed to happen. You know, we were all waiting. And then, you know, next thing you know, it's January 1st. So he's going to come on. He's going to clear the air. And it's going to be an exciting show. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night. He is one of the most visible guys out there. I remember sitting on my satellite system here and looking up documentaries. You know, I'm a big documentary guy. And at one point in 2012, from, like the summer all the way up to December, you would click on the documentary section there, and the first 20, 30 documentaries were all something to do with 2012. And I watched most of them. But John was like in every single one. I mean, he was just the specialist, the guy. And I want to know. So tomorrow night I'm going to find out. What's his life like now? What's he doing now? What's he working on now? He's a genius, very smart guy. But I also want to know what went wrong. Did we get it wrong? So tomorrow night, John Major Jenkins. I am really, really looking forward to that. Now, if you go over, let me back up a step. On April Fool's Day, a couple of posts popped up on Facebook. And I was just talking to Keith right before the show. Keith and I do our little meeting every day. It's like going to the principal's office, and I have to sit there and take it like a man. And Keith and I were talking before the show, and he said, "Did you see Art's post that he did on April Fool's Day?" And I just went, "Oh, no." And so anyway, Art posted on Facebook a little thing. Now, I'm not going to clarify what the post did or didn't mean. I'm not here to do that. I'm not Art. Just the guy filling in until he returns. And apparently that's what this post was about. and he mentioned a couple of time slots. One of them was this time slot, 7 to 10. And another comment was if or this could happen, this could happen. Another one was about if he could get out of his serious non-compete. I guess it's in this post. So that, again, that has nothing to do with me. But it was posted on April Fool's Day. So you can go check it out yourself and draw your own conclusions. But Art implied an imminent return. Makes you think, doesn't it? But it was April Fool's Day, so who's to say? Go check it out. Also, on April Fool's Day, our good friend, John Greenwald, over at Black Vault, did the same thing. He chose Facebook. And I'll tell you right now, and I assume John's listening. I just shot him an email before the show. We were emailing each other back and forth today. And I emailed him that I was going to mention this on the show tonight. He posted on Facebook that, and he had this really cool graphic he posted, and it had, I think it was like the FBI and the NSA and some Department of Justice or something, 3 logos, 3 badges, 3 official government seals, that the Black Vault was shut down due to the United States versus Greenwald. And until that case came to an end, the Black Vault was going to be pulled off the net. And I read that and saw that and forgot that it was April Fool's Day. And I almost had a heart attack. The day before, maybe the day before, I posted a bunch of stuff from the Black Vault on our site, and also talked about it on the show, which was the black triangle that was shot over Texas, and the chili, which actually, if you go to jimmychurchradio.com, you scroll down for the galleries for tonight's show, I think the Jimmy rant from that day is still posted. Those are from the Black Vault. Well, I had a heart attack. John is the man, and somebody that I respect a lot, and I took it. Hook, line, and sinker. He reeled me in. And what I didn't do, which is something that everybody should do, but I didn't go and read the post underneath it. Everybody laughing, April Fool's Day. And he got me. So go read Art's post. You can go read John's post as well. April Fool's Day. And I didn't do anything for April Fools. And after reading John's little thing, I thought it was really cool. Keith told me he did the same thing with Art's page maybe 10 years ago. And I wanted to do, you can't steal the idea. Can't do it. Maybe next year we'll think of something creative. They got me, though. A couple of things really quick with the chili thing that we were just talking about, that huge photograph on Black Vault and the triangular UFO. Both of those articles are on Black Vault, and they're still on jimmychurchradio.com. But had a couple of, and this is for you, Uncle Duke. I hope you are listening. He posted, and I had to go back and actually look at some physical photographs that I have here, actual 35 millimeter real photographs taken from negatives that I had taken years ago of a B2. He said that black triangle looks like a B2, and he said that there is no aurora. And I wasn't alluding to aurora directly, but I was thinking more, some kind of top secret black ops plane flying. It didn't really look like a B2 shape, but Duke says it's a B2. So go check out the black triangle. Does that look like a B2? It looks too triangular for a B2. B2 is more wingy. So I don't know. And the way the contrails are, too, I don't think a B2 does that. It ain't too stealthy if you're flying around like that, in my opinion. But I just wanted to mention that. Duke, I did see that, and I went and looked at my photographs. And what I have of the B2s flying overhead from a couple of air shows that I had attended, it's more wingier. Is that a right word? Wingier? But more wide. That shot is more. It's too narrow. It's more like an arrowhead. So I don't know. I don't know what the photograph is, but it's really cool. And it's right there at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also check out the article over at Black Vault. Okay, moving on. Crowds. I posted this today, and this is come in from The Guardian. Check this out. Crowds are flocking to this church right now in Spain, looking at the Holy Grail. The world works in mysterious ways. I had a bunch of Grail thoughts over the weekend, and I wanted to go back and maybe visit that subject that took over the world for the last 10 years, Dan Brown. And then this story pops up. Now, a new book that has just come out claims that this Grail, this cup that is at this church, I don't know how to explain it, but if you look at the picture, you can tell that there's some kind of, it says alabaster, so you can see that there's an alabaster cup, and it's surrounded in gold. So the original goblet isn't that gold. I'm sure that the gold was added later. But is the Holy Grail, Last Supper, Jesus. And it's at Leon's San Isidro Basilica, and it's been there for a long time. This original goblet popped up in like 1037, somewhere in that area, 1030, 1037, when Urraca, daughter of Fernando I, king of Leon, that's when the goblet first showed. So it's been around for a long time. But I look at it, and I look at the picture, and I think of one of two things. So you've got to go check it out for yourself. But if you go and you look at it, what kind of a poor fisherman in Israel back then, what are his utensils at that Last Supper? And was there a goblet? I don't know. Was there some type of grail? I just see them drinking out of goat skins or something myself. I don't think there was that kind of money to have utensils. But if that's the goblet, well, and it's a cool book. So the book is called Kings of the Grail. Came out last week. Go check it out. But it looks like it's popped up in Spain. And as the story goes. Well, and also in the book, by the way, this is the only reason why I happen to mention it on the show today, is because that there were two Egyptian parchments that were found at Cairo University, and that mentions this goblet. So there you go. And it set these two on a 3-year investigation. So there you go. Kings of the Grail, published last week. Vladdy Putin, our good friend, Vladdy, called back some of his forces on the Ukrainian border. I almost feel relieved. I don't want anything to pop off over there. But I don't know. Right now, he's pulled his forces back, or some of them, 25,000. And if you look at, this is the thing, if you go right now or take the time maybe after the show and go look at a map of the Ukraine and look where Russia is on the east side of Ukraine. Look at the west side where you have Poland and everything else. So look how it sits. And then you can see that little touch of Russia on the east side and how it leads through to the Ukraine and then Crimea down at the bottom. I think that's what Russia's interested in, is that little territory right there on the east side. I don't see anybody invading anything. But that for Russia to do a full-blown invasion, they only touch half of the country. It's not like they surround the Ukraine or something like that. So, and NATO is right there on the left side, on the west side. So I don't see anything popping off. I feel better today. What are there? Oh. Check this out. If you haven't heard yet, MySanAntonio.com today released a story. And it is Rick Dyer. You know Rick, the Bigfoot guy. With the fabulous photographs and the body of the Bigfoot that he was taking across the country, charging money to go and see. And it was announced, not only on this show, but everywhere a couple of months ago, that he was going to march across the country with his Bigfoot body. And the story was just crazy how he shot this Bigfoot. Maybe it was a Bigfoot mom. Maybe he shot a kid too, a baby Bigfoot. Maybe he didn't. The story got a little bit out of control. But the photographs were pretty cool. It was on ice, the body. And he was going to take it across the country. Well, today, he admitted it was all a hoax. That's right. He's a con man. I know you're bummed. Mark Center, when I posted the Bigfoot pictures a couple of months ago, it's just like, dude, stuffed. That ain't real. But the body was the Bigfoot. He was 8 foot tall. He was called Hank. He admitted that it was all a prop that he had built himself and stuffed and made it to look like Bigfoot. But he got into a little bit of a tiff, and I've said it so many times on this show. If you're going to hoax something, you better have it together, because somebody in your immediate circle is going to rat you out. Just like John Teeter. I told you. John Teeter, somebody in that inner circle, if it's a hoax, is going to crack. And it's been 14 years with Teeter, and nobody has. But it didn't take long. Andrew Clacy, one of his boys on his crew, they got in a fight in Daytona last week. Lawsuit threats, resignations, and then finally Dyer had to come clean. And he posted on Facebook the truth. He emailed Clacy. Clacy emailed out a statement to the San Antonio Express News on Monday, admitting that the body was a prop. And I quote here, "From this moment on, I will speak only the truth. No more lies, tall tales, or wild goose chases to the mess with all of these haters," Dyer said on his Facebook page. It has since been deleted, but we haven't. Don't worry about it. He went on to say, and I quote, I have never treated anyone bad. I'm a joker. I play around. That's just me." End quote. Now, how can you believe that? How can you believe anything? Once one thing is done, that's it. It's over. It's done. I will speak only the truth, he says. Well, dude, nothing that you said was the truth. I was looking at a bunch of pictures over at the San Antonio website. People lined up down the street, taking the money, big lines, publicity, standing there posing for pictures. It's disgusting. And the thing is, what's he going to do with the money? Going to give it back? People weren't looking at a real Bigfoot. You took their money. You going to give it back? Rick? I say arrest the guy. So now the San Antonio police have said that they haven't received, as of this moment, any complaints. We don't know if there's a criminal offense committed, Sandy Gutierrez said, spokesperson, I should say, spokeswoman. But a petition to charge Dyer with fraud is now on a website, change.org, and you can go and check that out yourself. Hundreds of signatures as of Monday afternoon. I want to back up. If you go over to CNN.com, you haven't heard me mention the Malaysian plane tonight. Go over to CNN.com right now. I'm there. I'm looking at the page. And you know what's strangely missing from CNN.com right now? The Malaysian plane. On the homepage, not one mention. Go with me. Here, let me, I'm going to move the microphone so I can look at this a little bit clearer. Right now at CNN.com, the headline, of course, is the shooting over at Fort Hood. That's not what I do here, so there's no mention from me about that. But the shooting at Fort Hood. Now scroll down. Oh, Oh, we just got an update. Oh, okay. The search for Flight 370 got a little tick. But go to the latest news. Cities host 2013 or 16 RNC, 300 inmates escaped, quake in Chile, NATO, Russia. Sailor goes overboard during a race, man in hospital, chainsaw, Yoda fan, 57-cent part, Microsoft, Amazon, Disney. Go to the co-headline, buying influence just got easier for the rich. If you go down under CNN Worlds, Akira, you can't trust Putin, Chile earthquake, South Korea. No Malaysian there. Go to U.S. Man survives chainsaw, Yoda. Is this the real Chupacabra? Oh! I was going to mention that earlier. Strangely missing. I almost don't know what to say. I am of the... I'm ready to jump on that conspiracy bandwagon. How can a plane disappear? How can it just disappear? Not one single thing wash ashore anywhere. Nothing found, nothing. All those ships, all those planes and satellites, nothing. And then the Malaysian government announces that they got the last words from the cockpit wrong. Now, just like Rick Dyer and his Bigfoot, how do we trust the Malaysian government now in their investigation? I can't. I feel like nothing that they've said has been the truth from the beginning. Now they're searching in another search area closer to Australia. The final words are now, good night, Malaysian 370. And that, to me, they're saying, well, that doesn't sound strange. That sounds about as ominous as it gets. Good night, 370. Last Friday, during the broadcast, we had an earthquake here in California. And I didn't mention it on the air. I was in the middle of an interview, and everything started shaking in here. And I was just thinking, here we go. I got to call Keith. Everything was just shaking. And it just goes to show you how here in California, that shaking would have freaked anybody else out. But here in California, you just write it out. You just know. Now, what I didn't know during the show, that it was a 5.1, and south of us, it got pretty crazy. You've seen the pictures and the video. But here in Burbank, it just, and the people that that we had on the show, David Sheehan and Costa Macrease, they were up in Northern California, so they didn't feel it. So they didn't mention it on the air. And I just wrote it out. But, that happened live in the broadcast, and I just didn't say anything. If it would have continued on for a couple of more seconds or got a little bit more crazy, I might have said something. But, yeah, it happened during the show. I did feel it. There's a 3,300-year-old tomb with a pyramid entrance was discovered in Egypt. I just caught this a couple of days ago. It's over on Live Science, and really cool. Go check out the pictures, but 3,300 years old. And I've just got to say, the sarcophagus and some of the stuff that they found inside the tomb, this little heart statue, you've got to check it out. Very cool. 3,300 years old. The hieroglyphics, just spectacular. And to find stuff like this on these days, you just never know what's under the sand. It would be cool if we could just suck it all up and check it out, but and see what's under it. You just never know. When you think it's all been found, it hasn't. Over at artbell.com, by the way, I want everybody to check out the article on the X-37B, one of my favorite things out there, the space plane. And journalist and former assistant housing secretary, financial expert, Catherine Austin Fitz, with this really cool report. It's a groundbreaking report on the darkest secret of the black budget, which is the UFO economy. Go check it out. And with that, I'm going to take a break. When I come back after the break, we'll be live with Bill Burns. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter @JChurchRadio. Tomorrow night, John Jenkins tonight, Bill Burns and Ken Gerhard for the last two segments of the show. It's going to be a great show tonight. Yeah. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Don't touch that mouse. We'll be back with Bill Burns right after this. Stay with us, everybody.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Little glitch in the audio. You gotta love it. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. All right. Shoot us an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I got a bunch of tweets that I want to read. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's J, not J-A-Y, just a J. JChurchRadio. You can do it at jimmychurchradio.com. Just click on the link. You know what to do. All right. Let me bring up Bill here. A couple clicks of the mouse. Hang on, everybody. Let's get this going. Dude, weak, bink. Boom, done, boom. Bill should be here in just a second. I hung up on him on accident. Oh, man. All right, Bill, you with us?
Yeah.
I hung up on you. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
I had a commercial running at the same time, clicked on the mouse the wrong way, and the next thing you know, I had to make a choice. So I went back to the commercial. Okay. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We had you guys missed the earthquakes out there on the East Coast?
We missed them. I mean, we lived on our boat during the last few years we lived in L.A.
Right.
And so the only way we knew there was an earthquake or a tremor was if the land shook and the boat didn't.
Did it ever happen? That's crazy. So you were able to sit. Now, I know where you were in Marina Del Rey. So you have all those condos right there coming out on the piers, right? So, So you're parked in your boat. So you could stand on your boat. Your boat's not moving because of the shock absorption of the water. And so you're watching the buildings move? Is that what was going on? That's crazy.
You're watching the buildings move and the floating dock move because the floating dock is attached to the land by these gangplanks that run down. So as the land shakes, that vibration is going to get the dock. And so you're sitting on your boat and you're watching. I wonder if we're having an earthquake because everything else is moving except you.
That is nuts.
It was weird. And the worst part about it is I used to work as a consultant for a financial services company in L.A. in Beverly Hills. And if you know the Beverly Hills, Wilshire, Beverly Canyon corridor, you know there are some very tall buildings between where Century City starts and then Beverly Boulevard and Canyon Drive.
Right.
And when there was an earthquake, these buildings have a lot of sway in them so they don't fall apart in an earthquake. And you really feel the glass move and you feel the whole building just sway back and forth, and you see the other buildings swaying. It's like watching palm trees.
Yeah, I was we had those two earthquakes back in the 90s, the big one in 94, and then we had another one in like 92, and I was downtown in a hotel up about, I'm going to say 30, 40 floors up, and that one hit at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And when
I
it
remember
hit,
that.
Yeah,
I remember that very well.
And I go and I'm looking out the hotel room window at downtown LA, and the building is just swaying, and I could hear it. But this is what I saw, and it was the craziest thing like ever. I'm looking at transformers blowing up on the telephone poles in the dark, and it was like the craziest alien invasion movie you've ever seen. Just boom, 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 and these little mushroom clouds just blowing up all over the place. And so I didn't know if it was an earthquake or something really crazy.
And
But
they're blue. That's the thing about it.
It was
this odd blue color as they go, because we were living on Hollywood Boulevard when that happened, and we're looking down into the basin. So because we're up in the hill,
right,
where Hollywood Boulevard met Kings Road, and we're all the way up, and we're looking into the basin, and you're seeing all the explosions from the transformers, and then people are out in the street, because up there Hollywood Boulevard is barely one lane, right?
Yeah,
up in the hills.
That's right.
And so we're standing out there in the street, basically thinking, is this the end of the world? Because the house we were living in, well, we were about to buy it. We were in a contract to buy it, and it was Chad Everett's old house.
Okay, right.
Medical center.
Right.
And what we didn't know at that point was that the game room, which was fabulous in that house, the TV room, was built without permits into a hillside. So you've got two things negatively going for you. One, there are no permits, which means if you're going to buy the house and you get the inspection, that whole game room's got to come down. And two, the hillside was never supported with caissons. So as a result, you're spending $40,000 on caissons. Unfortunately, actually, luckily for us, the house was like this castle. Folks can drive by it and live in L.A. They'll see it as this castle-like little Bavarian castle at the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Kings Road.
I know the house.
Yeah. You know the house, right?
Yep.
And this turret separated from the main house and snapped. And all the windows broke, and there was some stained glass. The windows broke and everything. And that was it. We were out of there.
If you know what's funny? I don't know if you knew this, but if you were there in 92, right, from the front of the house, if you go continue up Kings Road, where it winds around the side of the hill, right there,
right,
that's where Ice-T lives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that big white modern house that hangs over. But right up the street from Chad Everett's house. Chad Everett's house, every time I drove by it, I always thought, man, that is whack.
It's a weird house.
It's a very weird house.
Well, when they built it, because of that strange roof in the main living room, they had to put tie rods inside the house. So you've got this huge cathedral ceiling, which was beautiful, and it was a slate roof, also beautiful, expensive to fix, but also beautiful. But it had these weird tie rods. So there was a balcony from the house into the turret. And then as you walked along the balcony, you could actually see the tie rods. I mean, it was really a fabulous house, but it was basically, almost what it was red carded, and just when the engineer came through and said, you have no permits for this game room, you're buying this thing, and the hill, it's going to cost you $40,000 to $30,000 just to support, because the canyon wall was all eroded from the floods they had in the late 80s.
So you rented the house. You didn't own it?
We rented it. It was
Thank
a rent
goodness.
to buy, and we just got out of the deal and said the house has been red carded. So we moved. So from there we moved to Tina Louise's house. Talk about crazy.
Oh, there you go.
A nut house. I'm serious. Down the street from Charlton Heston, and just that's in the Beverly Hills Post Office. That was Lime Orchard Road.
Right.
Try and get out of there on a busy morning to get either to the Valley or down to Sunset Boulevard. Try doing that.
After 9/11, when 9/11 happened that morning, I had to drive to my office in Santa Monica, and I'm going up because 405, and I didn't mess with any of that, and I'm coming through Hollywood down Santa Monica Boulevard in front of the Beverly Hills Post Office and the town hall. That's what it was.
Right.
And it was lined. They had the National Guard was already there, and they had tanks and other stuff lining right up in front. And I never forgot that. Then my point being, they surrounded. Nobody else was getting help, but the Beverly Hills Post Office was going to stay open, man.
Right, because it was the only place a federal unit could deploy because it was federal territory. But that was the reason, 9/11, we thought Los Angeles was going next.
I thought so.
We thought that's it. If they're going to hit New York, they're going to hit L.A., and if they hit L.A., we better get out, because we were living in Venice. We had this really weird Fred Fisher, odd, very architectural house, and we just got the hell out and rented it to this Italian motion picture company, and we moved to the boat, and that was when we got out of that house. It was great. I love the house, but we really thought the whole thing was coming down.
Did you ever, before we move on, I've only got a little bit of time with you tonight, and thank you, but did you ever participate in the Parade of Lights on Christmas in Marina Del Rey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there was the Parade of Lights.
I did that one year with my kids. A friend of mine had a sailboat down there. Incredible.
And then there's the mini Parade of Lights on the Venice canals.
Yep. I told you I lived down there. It was great. It was a great community. Everybody's in everybody's business. Everybody knows everybody, and I loved it. And you don't really have that anywhere else in LA like you do in Venice and Marina Del Rey. It's a very small community.
You don't. That's very true. You don't have it in Santa Monica. The only other place that comes close is Pacific Palisades.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yeah, North
Runyon
Pacific
Canyon.
Palisades.
Yep. Runyon Canyon.
There's a place, I forget the name of the canyon, but
I
it's
just said it.
north.
Runyon Canyon.
No, Runyon Canyon is all the way in the east. That was Runyon Canyon, because in Runyon Canyon, there's a very famous house. In Runyon Canyon, which is almost before you get to the East Hills, there's Bela Lugosi's old house from the 30s.
That's right.
That's in Runyon Canyon, but all the way over on the west side, right above it's Santa Monica Canyon is the street. And when you go down the canyon rim, you go into this beautiful, beautiful little valley, which is a canyon, which is where all the monarch butterflies would go. And this canyon, and I forget the name of it, I shouldn't, because I really wanted to move there. What the Hollywood studios did, all these rich guys from downtown, they bought some of the Western cabins from this is back in the 20s, from the Hollywood studios, these silent movie cabins. They bought them, took them apart, put them back together in this canyon. It's one of the only places where there's an active stream.
Yes. I've been there. I think that's Runyon Canyon, Bill.
No, Runyon Canyon's in the east. This is a whole different canyon. I forget the name, but it's between Santa Monica Canyon and Pacific Palisades.
Okay.
And the thing about it is, this is where the house is with that huge water wheel.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, a beautiful place, and you couldn't get in there for under a couple of million. I mean, it was just, that's the way it was.
It's still the place to be. It's still the place to be, and the fauna and the vegetation. You go there, and you would if you were dropped off there and you didn't know where you were in the United States, the last thing you would think is Los Angeles.
Absolutely, it was so unlike Los Angeles that the people who lived there were very protected. Like Ted Danson lived up in the canyon rim.
Jamie Lee Curtis lives there. You can go on and on and on and on and on who lives there, but just absolutely cool. And where that water wheel is, where the creek is, right next to it is on the other side of the house with the water wheel is a little elementary school.
Yes.
And I would and I would look at those kids at that elementary school thinking, "Man, who are your parents?" And you are the luckiest kids in the entire world.
Well, who were your parents? Remember, when you went back towards L.A. into Santa Monica Canyon, there was this gas station, the only one I've ever seen in my life that sold 100-octane gas.
Probably.
Only one I've ever seen. I'm saying, who drives these? What are these Maseratis?
Yes. Absolutely. All right, so let's pick up where we left off. And we got into a spirited conversation. Oh, before we get there, I just wanted to address really quick a bunch of tweets that just came in. So let me address these. Yes, we know the audio went out. That was my fault. Thank you. Next, and I want to say, Eugene, this iPhone picture from Diego Garcia, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet. Email it to me, please. I would like to talk about that, and I do want to see that picture. And Rick Dyer being another tweet, Rick Dyer being a hoax on April Fool's Day. I don't think so. I don't think of the San Antonio. I don't know. I could be wrong. And if I jumped ahead, I got burned for the third time with a bad April Fool's joke. Okay, so getting back to Corso and the Bud Hopkins interview, and you and I were talking about how Bud kind of, pinned a dying Philip Corso, against the wall and was drilling him pretty good in that video. That I think it's Bud's wife, right? Bud's wife had
Carol
shot it.
Rainey.
Yeah, that's right.
Carol Rainey, Bud's wife, Carol Rainey.
Yeah, and I felt weird about the video because I understood both sides of the video. I understood what Bud was trying to do because Bud tries to run with a clean slate. I get that. I see Philip's side on it where and it's uncomfortable watching the video is what it is. You got an old man sitting there and Bud just and Corso was slouched down. You can tell he's not going to live for very much longer. You can see that. I don't know how old he is in the video. How old do you think he was in the video?
Well, I know that he was in his 80s, and I know that he had already gotten sick by that point because the reason he went to Italy was there's this person, Paula Harris, who's not a friend. And Paula Harris, we introduced Paula Harris to Phil. We introduced Paula Harris, Nancy did, to Phil Corso at the 1997 Roswell 50th anniversary. And they were speaking Italian, and she invited him to Italy. Well, that trip to Italy, where he encountered Bud Hopkins, who was already mad because it was Bud Hopkins' book did not make the New York Times bestseller list day after Roswell did. There's a reason for it. Bud never understood the reason for it. I tried to, when he was reaming me out before they went to Italy, I tried to explain what I did in the book, and he would not. He was like blockheaded about not even acknowledging that I was talking. He just said his piece, and I'm wondering if that's how he conducted his therapy. You could, understand a lot. So, but he was furious about the books making the bestseller list. But it was in Italy that Corso, who basically played many sides against the middle, he was a true intelligence officer, was inching into a deal to sell the Italian rights the day after Roswell to this publishing company run by the Baiada brothers. And without realizing, because he didn't care, that's what made me mad about working with him, he didn't care. The foreign rights were owned by Simon & Schuster. They were the ones that could sell the foreign rights.
Right.
So I had to be the bad guy when Paula Harris and the Baiadas turned up with this Italian translation of Day After Roswell, to put my foot down and say, you guys can't do this. You are infringing on copyright. Went to Simon & Schuster's legal department, and I knew the lawyer pretty well because we'd vetted the book together and dealt with Strom Thurmond together. And when that happened, they just sent a cease and desist notice, and they used one of the international copyright conventions, and that earned me the undying hatred of the Baiada brothers and Paula Harris, because I had to do what the law required me to do. It was just that simple. And so, sure enough, the Baiadas bought the Italian rights from Simon & Schuster, and the book was published in Italy. But, I mean, I have to tell you, it was a very, very ugly situation, especially because on the one hand, I represented the book. On the other hand, so my first and highest duty under California law, I have to understand that, it's governed by California law. So my first and highest duty was to my client, who was not Philip Corso, it was the motion picture company in the state of California. Your first and highest duty is a fiduciary duty if you're an agent or a lawyer to the client whom you represent, and it ends there.
Absolutely.
So I was not adversarial to Corso. I really couldn't be, because it was a book that the movie company wanted done in a certain way and the publisher wanted done in a certain way, and they were the ones that owned the copyright. I didn't. So that was first of all. And second of all, I'm defending the proprietor's book, the movie company's book, against the artist, Phil Corso, whose life rights were purchased by the the proprietor of the book, the motion picture company. So you can see how awkward this whole thing was. And that really made Corso mad. Corso stomped off to Las Vegas, popped up on the Art Bell show with John Alexander.
Right.
They talked, but the meeting was a pretext for Corso to try to convey the rights to actor Steven Seagal, who wanted to play Corso.
Right.
So Simon & Schuster gets the message from Steven Seagal's lawyer, who's a big Century City lawyer, right? A big Century City, Beverly Hills lawyer, major attorney in Beverly Hills, entertainment attorney. He calls Simon & Schuster to say, okay, fine, I'm sending you a quit claim on the book because we've just acquired the rights. Simon & Schuster calls me because they know the motion picture company owns the rights. I call the lawyer back and say, look, bad news. The rights are already gone to the motion picture company. Happily, and I gave him the name of the lawyer. It was either Kenny Zifrin or Skip Brittingham, one of the two. But they were both partners. And I called the motion picture company, and they said, fine, we will happily deal with Steven Seagal's lawyer. But Seagal couldn't come up. No studio would pay for this book. Okay, that was the problem. There was no motion picture studio that would pay the couple of $1 million for the rights to the book. So the deal died. But again, I was the guy that got blamed because I was the bad guy who had to go to the motion picture company, go to Simon & Schuster, go to the two lawyers in Century, their office was in Century City, go there and basically blow the whistle on this thing and say, you guys can't do this. So that's a lot of the kind of Corso backstory from the lawyerly, agenty perspective.
Well, I had told you before, and I truly mean this. I read that book at least twice in the first 24 hours that I had it, and I don't know how many times over the years. I have the hardcover edition. I don't know. Did it ever come out in paperback? Doesn't matter. But,
it came out in mass market paperback. In fact, it's still selling 10 years later.
I'm sure it is.
Almost 20 years later as a mass market paperback and as a Kindle book and all that stuff.
Is there any part of the book that, looking back, that you wish that you wrote it a different way or maybe approached it a little bit different, or does it still stand on its own?
Well, the way the book is now, at a certain point, it left my hand, so there was nothing that I could do.
Right.
What happened was we had to deliver the manuscript to Phil Corso in Florida. And we were on our way. This is the head of the motion picture company now. We flew from L.A. to Florida, met with Corso, delivered the manuscript. We said, here, take the manuscript, go through it, make any changes you want. Whatever you want to do, go through it. Okay, this is the book with your name on it, Phil. So whatever you want to do, do. So Phil takes the box with all the papers in it, throws it in the back of his Pontiac Firebird, and speeds off like Parnelli Jones. I mean, this guy really took off. Comes back that night. Meanwhile, we're cooling our heels in Florida, knowing that the next day, that morning, we're flying up to New York. We're taking the shuttle up to New York, or not the shuttle, but we're flying up to New York, and we're meeting at Simon & Schuster. So it's one of those crazy deals where it is 2 degrees. This is in February of 97. So it's 2 degrees in New York, 92 degrees in Florida, and we just left 82 degrees in California. You can imagine how whacked out you get from the weather changing. Corso comes back, makes some minor changes. I didn't even go through them. We delivered the manuscript to New York. That was the last I saw of that manuscript. I saw galleys, and Corso saw galleys, but the motion picture company president was very, very meticulous about not letting the manuscript out of his sight except for Phil Corso, because he knew that the information in the manuscript was dynamite information, and he just didn't want anybody running off with it before it was delivered. Once it's delivered to the publisher, it's really no longer your
responsibility.
You're no longer on watch.
Right,
the
exactly.
publisher puts it into production.
Right. Well, there's with anything, with a movie, with a manuscript, with a record, whatever you're doing, there comes a point where you've just got to stop and go, okay, we're done. That's it.
Exactly.
You've
and
got
that's what happened.
Right. Why do you think, looking back, Why hasn't it been made into a movie? Is there a
Uh,
reason? Is it
bunch of
because,
reasons.
well,
Absolutely a bunch of reasons.
okay, then let me get my thought out because I know that you've got five answers. We'll get to the best one first. Is it because of the credibility on the book, or is it because of something in the back rooms? Is it a money thing? Too many people
It
own the
was a money thing.
rights? Is it a money
It was a
thing?
money thing.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, we had interest from all the major production companies at the studios, like the studio first look production companies. And so we had a lot of interest. I mean, Tom Cruise was interested. We took a phone call from him. Steven Seagal was interested. A bunch of people were interested. One of the problems was money, that the studios wouldn't put up. I mean, you have to look at what books fetch in the studio market, okay? At this point, the book had been on Art Bell, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list. And so the motion picture company, the production company, was being asked to relinquish the rights to the book to one of the other production companies, for all the production credits and blah, blah, blah credits. And I was really excited because of all the calls we were getting, because I had an office across the hall from that production company. And the price the company was asking was simply too high. It's simply they were not about to pay seven figures for this book. And that was why Steven Seagal didn't get the rights. That's why Tom Cruise walked away. And I've been in this situation before with a lot of other books that I've done all throughout the time in L.A., where the person who wants that book wants it done a certain way and asks a whole hell of a lot of money, especially when the publisher is involved, and the studio just walks away. We had this book called Life in the Balance that right before Tom Cruise was looking for a prison movie. So was Steven Seagal, by the way. I pitched the book to him. The studios would not put up the money. So that was the main reason the book was never made into a feature film. The book wound up on the History Channel as a documentary. I mean, I produced it for the History Channel because I was doing all these UFO files at the time. So I produced it with another company that bought the theatrical rights to, I call it the Corso Corpus, from this first motion picture company. And then I went to Hearst, Actuality Films, and they produced The Day After Roswell as part of the UFO files on history. And again, I basically put together the guest list, put together the pro Corso side. So it did wind up at History Channel.
One of the things that I found funny when the documentary came out on History Channel, before I saw it, I was thinking of a few things. Are they actually going to say Bell Laboratories? Are they actually going to say, and you guys did. That's the first thing that shocked me. But so after I watched it for the first time, I sat back and I thought, okay, here come the lawsuits. There's too many things that are presented as fact because they are are presented as fact in the book, and they came out that way in the documentary. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, okay, here we go. The poop storm starts now. And to the best of my knowledge, and this is the question, nobody did they?
Nope. There were no lawsuits, no claims, no assertions, nothing. I was pretty friendly with the SNS lawyer at the time, so she would have called me with any problems. She did with Strom Thurmond. I mean, Strom Thurmond had no memory, even though I still have his permissions form somewhere, or a copy of it. I gave the original to SNS. Strom Thurmond had no memory of signing that permissions form, but it was a stamp. He had this personal stamp because his hands were all gnarled up. It was his personal stamp that gave his permission, and his staff members were furious. That was the only pushback, and so that's why that forward lasted through two printings of the book, the first edition, and then into the second printing, and then by the third printing it was gone because they were screaming bloody murder at this. But not only were there no lawsuits from the companies named in the book, There was no statement of denial from the Pentagon. And the Pentagon went further. Not only did they not issue a statement of denial, the book was for sale at the Pentagon. They ordered boxes of this book.
Oh, downstairs in the bookstore, right?
In the bookstore, yeah. The book was for sale in the bookstore,
Yeah.
and it was for sale at all the military bases around the country.
Now, why? Now, okay, we had. I'm trying to think. We had like Monsanto, we had DuPont, we had Bell Laboratories, AT&T, IBM. Help me out. That's 5. We're leaving like 2 or 3 out. Who did the optics?
Well, the optics would have been Bell Labs. That was the fiber optics.
Oh no, I mean the night vision.
Oh, the night vision was Fort Belvoir. That was internal to the Army, and in fact, that was one of the documents that really got me intrigued. Corso, remember Corso? When I was brought in to work with Corso, I was brought in to work with Corso because I was, for this motion picture company, I was editing a bunch of authors, putting them all together. One of them is Jim Sanders from the TWA Flight 800.
Right.
That's a movie we just sold. And then another one was Chip Beck, who was a former CIA station chief in Africa. I was putting them together on a book on POWs, MIAs, because we had this phenomenal story. And Corso had just testified before the Dornan Committee on POW MIAs about the POWs we left behind in Korea at the end of the Korean War, Operation Little Switch, Big Switch, which he supervised.
Yeah, he supervised that whole thing. Right.
Right. Okay, so that was the point of that particular dealing with Corso. It was only after we had the initial meetings that Corso really dropped the bomb that he was at Army R&D with Arthur Trudeau, who he said was the guy. Corso never described himself as the instigator of this. The person he said was in charge of this, and I think it's in the book, was Arthur Trudeau, and Trudeau was the instigator. Corso said he was simply the bagman as deputy director of Army R&D. He was simply the bagman for Trudeau. All he did was carry the budget promises from the Army and carry parts of the Roswell debris to places like Fort Belvoir. Well, he produces a document. I still have it somewhere. He produces a document, and the document is all about the history of night vision. It's called Owning the Night. And it basically is an encomium, a pain to Arthur Trudeau, whom they call the father of night vision. So I said, why didn't they mention you? And Corso said, because I was irrelevant. He said, I'm the little man who wasn't there. I'm the guy who brought the bag to them. The people developing night vision didn't even know that it was the interior lid of this ET from Fort Meade. They didn't know that. All they knew was that here was some kind of compound, and they developed this. He said, I wasn't involved in the development. I didn't do the development. I carried the money. That's what I did.
Right. And how did Corso, because was it some kind of, flesh? I mean, how was it preserved? Was it on ice?
No, he said it was flesh in one of those seal-a-meal type of things. It was like vacuum sealed, and it was to analyze.
How come it didn't decompose? I'm asking the stupid questions, but I remember when I read that in the book, I just thought, how is he going across the country with some kind of alien flesh, and how does it stay fresh, and how are they able to, the stuff in my refrigerator in seal-a-meal bags doesn't stay that good for very long.
No, well, here's the thing. He didn't go across the country. Fort Belvoir is in Maryland. So literally, he drove it in a staff car from the Pentagon to Maryland to Fort Belvoir and gave one of the scientists there that particular vacuum sealed package. That was it. That was all Corso did.
I believe the book. Okay, I do. I've read it so many times, and it makes so much sense, and it just fits together. The only issue I have is that it feels a little funny to me. That's all.
Well, here were my issues about the book, and I had a few, but there was one major issue in support of it. One was the Fort Belvoir document, but partly my reservation. I had 2 big reservations. One was that it was Arthur Trudeau who did all the work, and was the person who was doing it because of the stuff in his own memoir, not Corso. And Corso waited until Trudeau died to tell the story. And that, that's an issue. The other one was this. I was surprised that the Roswell technology was so close to our technology circa 1947 to the 1960s that if this is such an advanced race, why is their technology so close to ours? I didn't get it. I really didn't. That's part of my reservation. The big thing in support is that during my conversations with Corso, long, long conversations, Corso began talking about how he was working for Richard Russell, Senator Richard Russell, on the Warren Commission. This would have been in 63 and in 64. So he's working for Richard Russell. And right after the Kennedy assassination, Corso is talking about going to the Pentagon, because he was, and just finding out from them that there was no military guard placed on the Speaker of the House. I mean, Johnson had just been sworn in. He had not brought Hubert Humphrey in yet as vice president, and there was no successor except the Speaker of the House. That would have been the natural successor. And there was no guard on the hotel where the Speaker of the House, and I forget, it wasn't Sam Rayburn, it was somebody else, where he was staying. And so, of course, that was one thing. And then Corso told me, and this became part of the book The Day After Dallas, which was never published, Corso told me that he knew from the passport office that there was more than one Lee Harvey Oswald. He knew that, he said, and that will come out. And in 1997, when Lady Bird Johnson released the Oval Office tapes from the Johnson White House, there's a conversation between J. Edgar Hoover and President Johnson. The day President Johnson came back from Texas, from Dallas, to the White House, Hoover's in the Oval Office, and this is all on tape, and it's now transcribed. You can get it. Hoover tells Johnson that he knows there are two Lee Harvey Oswalds because the Lee Harvey Oswald that showed up at the Soviet embassy in Mexico City was not the Lee Harvey Oswald that was identified as the shooter. Johnson tells Hoover in a stunning statement that nobody has picked up on. I can't figure this out. He tells Hoover, I know that. We know that. So Johnson knows there's more than one Lee Harvey Oswald. Then he tells Hoover, and this comes from Corso too, but it's in the Oval Office tapes, that they're going to not tell anybody on an upcoming commission to investigate the crime. There was no Warren Commission at that point, especially Allen Dulles. So the President of the United States, the federal chief law enforcement officer, agree to form a conspiracy to obstruct justice in a capital murder case, which is a capital crime in the state of Texas. Unbelievable.
But how come
this to me.
Now? Okay, I have like three questions. Let me see which one I can get out first. Number one, are you saying that Corso said this to you before Lady Bird released the tapes? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Well, that's stunning. That's cool. But the second thing is, how come? I'm not Bill. You are the man. I'm not suggesting, but how come nobody else has come forward with this? It just doesn't. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Sure, it does.
And have you? Okay. This is my third question. Have you talked about this before, or is this?
Yeah. Sure.
Why is it getting squashed?
Because
I don't understand.
There is. I'll be blunt. It was the same reason when I brought the Dr. Feelgood story to HarperCollins.
Right.
This was back before UFO Hunters, so I wasn't even doing I wasn't doing I was doing television for UFO Files on history, but I wasn't. We hadn't yet started UFO Hunters. And HarperCollins, the editor I brought it to at HarperCollins, flopped. She was a brand new editor. She took it to the Kennedy editor there, and they put seven figures on the table. And I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it. This was great. 2 days later, a newer head of that publishing division yanked it and said, if you think we're going to piss off the Kennedys with any story that's the least bit challenging to the Kennedy myth, they said Caroline Kennedy is a monster when it comes to this, and we're not going to do it. And so, since I'd already faced this in talking about the day after Dallas, Simon & Schuster was really willing to go forward on this for the day after Dallas. Corso died, so we didn't do the book. But they were willing to do this. But nobody else. The only other reference to this, in fact, the astounding thing was in Michael Beschloss's book, Taking Charge, a Simon & Schuster book, I believe, on the Oval Office tapes in the immediate aftermath of the assassination, this statement doesn't appear in that book. Years later, I read something from David Bellin, who was one of the Warren Commission apologists, who basically said nobody could take that statement seriously because J. Edgar Hoover always made up stuff. I grant you, nobody can take J. Edgar Hoover seriously all the time. Having done a book about J. F. Hoover all the way back in the 80s,
right.
I knew that. But the problem was it wasn't J. Edgar Hoover. It was Johnson's agreeing that he also knew that. And it was Johnson suborning J. Edgar Hoover to commit a crime of obstruction of justice after the fact of a capital crime in Texas.
Well, wouldn't the real obstruction of justice should have been the planning of erasing those friggin' tapes? Because those guys, I don't understand why it was those two of all two in the country, the head of justice and the new leader of the free world, who just got sworn in on a 707, right? Okay, mm-hmm. Sitting in the Oval Office discussing this, knowing it's being recorded. The real obstruction of justice should have been the losing of those tapes, the destruction of the tapes. Or
they were lost. They were lost for really over 40 years. They were lost until Lady Bird Johnson. See, once a tape recorder's running, it's like when you're on the air. You've got to be very vigilant about what you say. But when a tape recorder is running, sometimes you get so used to just talking that you actually forget the tape recorder is running.
Or unless they were planning on
the Nixon tapes,
right? Unless they were planning on erasing them later. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, maybe. Lady Bird released them, and they're anybody could hear them.
Man, I love having you come on this show. You just get me going. Hey, Bill. Really quick, I got a question that just came in from Renee, and the question is this, and it's an excellent question. I've been talking about this a lot on this show. Please ask Bill what he thinks is causing the trumpet sounds coming from all around the U.S., and do we know if people in other countries are experiencing it too? You know what she's referencing, right?
Yeah, I do, and I hear them myself. I mean, there are these trumpet sounds.
What is it?
I have no idea. I mean, some people are saying it's a harp issue, and that's what it is. Other people are saying it's something called the low frequency hum issue, which is this low frequency sound. It's audible. There's this low frequency sound, and this low frequency sound is a lot of our security agencies, the other military really, is these are kinds of surveillance mechanisms. These are low frequency hums. They're part of some kind of a defense, some kind of a DARPA experiment on low frequency sounds. The conspiracy theory is, well, there is a conspiracy theory, obviously. The conspiracy theory is that these are disruptor sounds. What they're testing is a way to disrupt the population by playing certain frequencies. And so you basically are able to do some form of mind control. And this stuff's been going on since the late 1940s. This is, I mean, in the larger picture, this is not new, but there are all kinds of these experiments going on, and they keep going on, and they're ostensibly harmless, but there is a larger issue.
I've got two theories. One, it could be the good old Almighty for real. That's the first thing. I mean, I'm being serious. The second thing is just like when over in Iraq, when we were doing those holographic images up in the sky and freaking out the Iraqi troops, which I believe happened. So it could be something along those lines with some dark, black ops segment out there of the military or of the government playing these sounds to also have the same effect, like you're saying, mind control affecting the population. It's a weird thing because, and the reason why I would think something that drastic, I watched this videotape. I've watched many, but I watched this one specific videotape. It's a baseball game, and it's live, pro baseball game, and the announcer, you can hear it in the background, right? And the announcer's like, "Hey, what is that? Wow!" And you could see the announcer's talking about it live on the air. And then I watched another videotape of a family running out in their front yard with a video camera recording because of the sound that was playing. And it's exactly the same sound that's going on in that baseball game. Not a low frequency. I mean, it sounds like some kind of Armageddon warning coming. You remember the old air raid siren, the tornadoes things that we would have?
That.
Yeah, going on the nuclear stuff when we were kids. Kind of like that. But the population today that wasn't around in the 60s, or early 70s, if you weren't there, you never heard all of the civil defense stuff that used to go off weekly across the United States.
That's true. I remember it in the 50s.
Yeah, and I kind of miss it. But, desk diving, you remember that? So, but it kind of reminds me of that, some type of warning. And I don't know what it is. I really don't. And it's going on all over the place. You're saying harp, and I'm thinking harp too. Wolf McCarran said harp. He was like, dude, I think it's harp. I think it's harp. So, and it is kind of like East Coast, West Coast thing, which would indicate harp. I don't know. It is absolutely nuts.
Well, you said an interesting thing, which I'm wondering about. And it's this. You said this could be, this is like the voice talking to us, right? The Almighty is coming.
Right.
And my question to you is this. If that were to happen, okay, let's just speculate for a second.
Speculate.
What is your concept of, let's say, Jesus, God, returns to earth? What would be the protocol for that? What would be the format for that? How would God do that? What is your thought about that?
Kind of like those horns that we were just talking about. I don't know. And the one thing that and I think about that all the time. Everybody does. What if? What if? We don't know. Nobody has the answer. It's all based on faith, first off. And my reaction is more about the other atheists that are out there, or the atheist on the fence atheist that would go either way. Suddenly they're grabbing a Bible. I knew it. Or the other. But I look to that as it's not so much if aliens arrived at on Earth and the Armageddon and the anarchy in the streets, that's what would happen. What would cause anarchy in the streets and mayhem is if it did happen. And if it does, I think the skies light up. That's what I think.
Well, I'll tell you my theory. My theory is that, let's just say Jesus Christ were to come to Earth. The Bible already tells us exactly how he would appear. Jesus said, "So as ye love the least of my creatures, is as you would love me." He already, that's in the Gospels. And my theory is that if that were to happen, Jesus would come to Earth as a homeless person, as a street person, as a person most people would literally kick aside, or, as happened in Orange County recently, the police would beat to death.
Right.
That's how Jesus would come back.
Oh man, I don't. I've never wanted to. There's two things I never really want to talk about on this show. It's religion and politics.
Right.
And,
of course
and
you don't.
but I don't, because I'm really I'm apolitical. I'm right down the middle of the road. I can go either way. And when it comes to religion, before I look at, there's so many religions in the world, and they all kind of, I wish they weren't fighting against each other, because if they ever stop and took a breath, they'd realize that they all believe in the same thing. That's the
Right, and they all came out of the same place.
Yes.
I mean, they all, when you look at this thing, I hate to push the ancient aliens theory, but which has been pushed to death, but when you realize where so many of the stories of the Bible come from, they come from this Mesopotamian Golden Triangle.
Yep.
They come from Sumer.
Yep.
The Hebrews migrated from what is now that Iraq, from Mesopotamia, and all of these, I mean, the flood, we've discovered an ark. It was a big circle like a bathtub. So we've discovered an ark. But this was in the Sumerian engravings. We know for a fact now that at a certain point, the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea
were connected,
flowed together. They were connected.
Absolutely.
We know about the flood from the Sumerian text from Gilgamesh.
Yep.
And so there is so I believe that they all started in the same place.
And I go one step further. I go one step. You're right, and you're 100% correct, and I agree. But I go one step further. I honestly feel this is, and I just find it hard to change my mind on this, is all the way back to the Big Bang, all the way back. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the show, that this wasn't the only Big Bang. There's somebody doing a bunch of Big Bangs. If you went out to, if you go out to the edge of the universe, the edge of everything that we know, you go out to the very edge where on the other side is blackness, right? Space continuing. Keep going. There's another universe coming at us this way from the other direction. And if you look down, there's another one going on down there. Look above you. There's just no way we're the only thing out there. And there's intelligence way beyond anything that we can imagine that is just goofing around and creating this stuff. And that is where our answer lies. That's how I feel about it. That's how you want to know my answer. There it is.
I had a conversation with Paul Smith, who'd be a great guest, by the way, for your show. Paul Smith was one of the coordinate remote viewing people in the original Army remote viewing program with Harold Putoff, with Paul Price, with Ingo Swann.
Ingo Swann, yeah.
Yeah, tells an incredible story. Anyway, so we're talking about the perpetual nature of the universe. And one of the things that I wondered was, might there be a point at the edge of everything where the dark matter energy is so dissipated that literally the electronic magnetic attraction between bodies, that begins to pull the universe together? And might the universe collapse into where it was before the Big Bang at a certain point? And then might the pressure of that energy expand it again?
Started over.
I said, right. So if you realize that matter can never be created or destroyed, that's part of the special relativity theory.
That's correct.
If that's true, and if the universe has obviously hundreds of billions of years collapsed and expanded, you now don't know when you were created. You could have been created in expansion 3, or right. You could have been created in expansion 4. You wouldn't know, but whatever you are, the same stuff that makes you makes everybody else. So you might have, call it biological cellular memories of being somebody else. And if quantum entanglement is true, you're entangled with everybody else in a certain way, hence the law of attraction, but you're entangled with everybody else. But if you can imagine the universe as expanding and then contracting, and expanding and then contraction, it's our universe, expanding and contraction, what does that represent to you if you can picture that? It's a heart. And if that heart could be the creator.
You know, and I would love to get Richard Dawkins on this show. I just rip him apart.
Oh, yeah.
I'd rip them apart. Hey, Bill, thank you for coming on. I got to get out of here.
My pleasure.
And again, see, we always end. We'll just pick it up another time.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Burns. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
You have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. We got to move straight on. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Keep the emails coming, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at jchurchradio. When I come back, Ken Gerhard, live. Woo, Bill.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Oh, yeah. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Welcome to everybody listening around the world. Shoot us an email to Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Twitter is flying tonight. Randy just got yours. Great show so far. Really enjoyed your guest. Surprised you haven't mentioned the quake, the 7.8 down in Chile. You know what's funny, Randy, on CNN, the reason why I did mention it, CNN's already wondering if the two, you know, what happened here in L.A. and what happened down in Chile are connected. The truth is, nobody knows anything about earthquakes. When that happens, it just happens. I kind of miss the Midwest with tornado warnings. I'd do anything for an earthquake warning. All right, let's get it cracking. That's cracking number 3 tonight. Ken Gerhard is a widely recognized cryptozoologist and field investigator for the Center of Fortean Zoology, as well as a fellow of the Pantasia Institute and consultant for various research organizations. He has searched for evidence of mysterious animals and legendary beasts around the world, including Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, enigmatic winged creatures, and even werewolves. In addition to appearing in 3 episodes of the television series Monster Quest, Ken is featured in the History Channel special The Real Wolfman, as well on Paranatural, Legend Hunters, Weird or What with William Shatner, and Ultimate Encounters, Unexplained Files, Monsters and Mysteries in America, and The Monster Project. I would like to welcome to the program right now, Ken Gerhard. Ken, are you with us, sir?
I am, Jimmy. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Thank you. And I'm horribly excited.
No, thank you. It's definitely an honor and pleasure to be a guest on your show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And the honor is all ours. Trust me. Thank you very much. Now, I start off the conversation the same with everybody. And I know you're familiar with it, but just for any new listeners out there, they have to hear this for the first time, which is, I have no questions in front of me. You're just a guest in my home. We're sitting on the couch doing what we do. And wherever this conversation ends up at the end, hopefully you and I find it interesting and everybody else out there will too. So are you ready to go?
That sounds good.
What did you think? You heard about this Bill Dyer thing, by the way?
Rick Dyer.
Rick Dyer. Bill Dyer. Bill Burns was just Rick Dyer.
No worries. Yeah, of course I do.
And you're in Texas, right?
I live in San Antonio. I live about a few miles from where he said he shot the thing, which I take as either a personal jab at me since it was in my backyard,
Right.
or he apparently used me on his website as kind of a reference or to add credibility to the fact that there have been sightings of an alleged Bigfoot in that area. But,
Right.
Honestly, Rick Dyer, I tried to not let him into my universe for the past couple of years, but eventually too many people were just asking me about it. So the big news should be no surprise to anybody is that he's finally come out and admitted that, yes, it was a clay dummy that he's been touring around the country with and charging people $10 a pop to see, but he really did shoot a Bigfoot near San Antonio, and the body is in some undisclosed location at this point. So.
Whoa. Okay, let's back up. Okay, so okay, all right. Now, see, I can already see the tweets coming in. Jimmy's he doesn't know what to say. Let's back up for a second. He has come out, as you know, said that this was a hoax. Now, are you suggesting that the body that he's been displaying, he's admitting to not being real, but that he actually did shoot a Bigfoot in San Antonio? Am I understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding, or at least his most recent blog that I read a day or two ago. Now, it should be noted, of course, that he pulled this same thing back in 2008, 2009 when he announced that he had shot a Bigfoot in Georgia and had a big CNN news conference, and then ultimately it was revealed that that particular carcass, which was frozen in a cooler, was actually a costume stuffed with entrails and different things. And when I met Rick Dyer face-to-face a year or two later, he told me that he actually had shot a Bigfoot, but that the CIA had taken the body away.
When and what do we believe out of Mr. Dyer?
I believe that Rick Dyer is making a lot of money. That's my personal belief, and he admitted that as well. And I guess in some respects we have to tip our hats to him because he has figured out a way to use the Bigfoot mystery and the public's fascination with Bigfoot and to basically cash in.
Well, the reason why I even before he broke the news, I even talked about this on this show, and I might have even done it with Dr. Meldrum when he was on, who is great. But Rick said that he shot this Bigfoot, and then he changed his story and said that he shot a Bigfoot mom and the kids, and then and I just didn't know which story was supposed to be the first story, the one that should have been the true story. And when he started twisting things around, that's when I just kind of backed off. Now, when I saw the photographs, I thought, wow, okay, those look pretty good. And if he's going to take this body out around the country, then he's got to have something, or else he's going to come out looking like a schmuck. So I just don't know which Rick Dyer to believe now. For him to post, and you read probably the post, the original ones before he pulled them down, that he said, from now on, I'm only telling the truth. So I don't know what to believe.
Well, he's also a self-admitted jokester, and he likes pushing people's buttons, as many of us do, but just in different ways. And so I don't know. I mean, to me, this is a valuable lesson for the public at large in terms of dealing with remarkable claims, and primarily looking at the source of all remarkable claims and things like motivation and so forth.
Yeah. Well, that you coming on the show, I wanted to talk about some other things, and then all of a sudden this Rick Dyer thing popped up, and San Antonio, and I just thought, okay, all right, I just got to go there. And I didn't realize, because you and I didn't talk about Dyer before the show, but I didn't realize that you had a relationship with him. Let me ask you this, though.
I wouldn't say, let's backtrack. Let's not. I met him one time, and before we move on, if I could just say one other thing. Jim,
Sure.
The location where he claims he shot the Bigfoot is 2,000 feet from a Starbucks. So
what?
Let's leave it at that.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, then I am going to ask my next question. Then, when you're looking at him in his eyeballs, right? When you're right there and you're talking, if somebody is full of it. When you're looking at his eyeballs, is it? How do you feel?
Man,
Okay, that's it.
I don't want to be disrespectful to somebody in a public forum, but because he has created so much negative publicity in terms of Bigfoot research, I will say this: he pulled up to an event I was speaking at in a customized truck, boldly emblazoned with the world's greatest Bigfoot tracker. That's what it says on the side of his vehicle. And he was nice and cordial and somewhat charming. I didn't get the sense that he was the world's greatest Bigfoot tracker. In fact, I'd be surprised if he could track a mailbox, to be honest with you. But he did take me aside and ask me kind of off the record if I would be willing to mentor him, so to speak, which came as a shock since, he is the world's greatest Bigfoot tracker. I figured it would be the other way around. But,
Right. Okay, well, then certainly we can move on. Let's have some fun. Okay, everybody out there listening, you know what to do. Go to jimmychurchradio.com, and I hope you have a computer there, Ken. Our producer. Okay, anyway, the gallery for Ken is posted in its normal spot on the homepage, and I'm going to refresh. I'm going to announce to my producers now. Picture number 2, Ken and Demon, is sideways, but let me refresh, and hopefully they have fixed it. I caught that right before the show tonight. So I'm assuming you emailed it to us sideways, and then one of our producers here wasn't looking at what they were posting. Okay.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry if that's the case. I didn't know I had any sideways images on my computer, but I guess I might have a couple.
Well, what's funny is I have sideways producers here that, they're putting together a gallery and didn't see it. So it's the one of you and the Demon, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. That was all in good fun.
Okay, so we've got this gallery posted, and this is one of the coolest subjects that any of us can bring up, and certainly, Mothman and that whole thing. And I just want to pick your brain on all of it tonight, if you don't mind, and we'll just I'm going to act like I know nothing, and I'm going to let you blow my mind, because I think it's just one of the most fascinating subjects out there, and it goes back forever in history. And there is something to it, if you know what I mean.
No doubt.
Okay. No doubt. So while everybody's opening up these galleries, how did you I know this is kind of a basic question, but I've just got to hear from you first. How did you get into this? Cryptozoology is an out there subject. And were you mentored into it? Was there something in your childhood? Was it your parents? How did this start for you?
Oh, yes. The $1 million question, of course. How did you become a professional weirdo?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, okay.
I get this a lot. To be honest with you, Jimmy, it's nothing I ever planned. I would say if I had an epiphany, it was when I was a young boy. This was in the late 1970s when Bigfoot would occasionally make it onto TV news shows in a serious way. But I remember watching a little news clip about Bigfoot, and like most boys that are 8 or 9 years old, I thought it was just the coolest thing I'd ever heard. The possibility of some giant, hairy, man-like creature running around in the woods of North America. So at that time, of course, there was nothing like the internet. So we went down to the library and checked out every book and read newspaper articles and just became kind of knowledgeable that way. And certainly never planned for it to be a career, though it was really a lifelong passion of mine. Cryptozoology has always been something I've been kind of obsessed with. However, I had quite a remarkable upbringing. My mother was a travel agent, and though she really secretly wanted me to be an archaeologist, she took me all over the world to all kinds of amazing places. We camped along the Amazon River with primitive natives. We hiked through the Australian desert. We went to Asia, Africa, you name it. And wherever we traveled, I was always interested in, the local legendary animals or, legendary beasts. And then when I was 15 years old, my family took a vacation at Loch Ness in Scotland. So at age 15, I attempted my first field research by interviewing people that had seen the monster and hiking around the lake with a little 8mm movie camera. And so that was kind of a big moment for me. And, as I got older, I began to work with some passionate Bigfoot researchers here in North America that would go out and do field research looking for evidence. And I experienced some things that piqued my interest that I couldn't quite explain. and started to write some books, and miraculously enough, I made it onto a few television shows too, and so it's just the whole thing's kind of snowballed for me, and I feel very blessed to have the opportunities that I've had to investigate some of these things.
I think it's the hat that you wear. That's where the respect comes from.
There's a lot of power in that hat. I don't know where it comes from, but
well, you know, you are the go-to guy now, and but I want to ask you, when I had Dr. Meldrum on the show, I brought him on, and he's great, by the way, and he did he did a really
brilliant.
Brilliant. And I had told him, we had talked many times before him coming on the show, and he was a little apprehensive. And I said, look, he said, Jimmy, I know you're a skeptic. And I said, it's not that I'm a skeptic, because you have to understand, Doctor, where I'm coming from. I think that Patterson film is real. And I think if the UFO community had a piece of footage like that to back up, that entire cadre of researchers out there, if they had a piece of film like the Patterson film in their back pocket, it would be a lot easier, an easier world for them to deal with. But you have that piece of film, and I believe that piece of film is real. So but what the problem that I have with Bigfoot is just how come I haven't hit one with my car? How come we haven't found anything? That's the only issue that I have. But because I'm torn between two lovers here, I've got the film that I believe is real, and then I've got the simple fact that, man, it's a really good hiding job that that Bigfoot and its family is doing with this. So that's where I come from, and I just want you to understand. So now that you understand that, what do you think about that Patterson footage? Is it your ace in the hole? Is it the smoking gun?
Well, the Patterson film is certainly very compelling footage, no doubt about it. I remember seeing it again in the late 70s, and even though I was very young, my first instinct was that is absolutely a real animal. There's no way that's a person in a costume, and I've watched the film, of course, hundreds of times throughout the course of my life, and my attitude has never wavered. I mean, to me, it has a very natural appearance, and what I ask people to do when they're question the Patterson film is to really look at costume technology that existed at the time that film was made in 1967.
Exactly right.
If you look at movies like Planet of the Apes, which came out a few years later, and 2001, some of those films where they had so-called ape men, there's no comparison. I mean, the costumes in those top-notch Hollywood features look ridiculous. They're baggy and they're saggy and they're not form-fitting. I mean, you can actually see in the Patterson film, you can see muscles flexing. You can see a very natural movement. You can see hair patterns and distribution that looks very natural and flowing. And even its behavior is, although we can't really say for sure what a Sasquatch behaves like since we haven't proven that they exist, but it's walking away. It's obviously trying to avoid confrontation, and it turns and looks back at one point to kind of see where it's at. So,
well, I'll take what you just said one step further. It's one thing to talk about Planet of the Apes in the 60s, right? I get that. I do, and I agree. But even today, you still know if it's fake. The costume technology hasn't gone leaps and bounds. You still know when you're looking at an ape costume. And with the Patterson footage, you look at that, and I just ask you, show me what is fake about it, because it doesn't exist in that film. It just doesn't.
Well, yeah, even up to and including the pendulous breasts that swing out.
Well, I was going to bring those up. I brought that up with Dr. Meldrum.
Why would someone try to fake that too? I mean, that's kind of a miraculous thing to attempt. And, there was physical evidence left behind too, Jimmy. A lot of people don't realize that, Patterson and Gimlin, after they stopped tracking the creature, they started to cover its tracks with buckets to protect them from the elements. Within a day or two, they were back there along with a man named Bob Titmus casting the tracks.
Right.
And several of those tracks exist, and those have held up to scientific scrutiny from people like Dr. Meldrum, who probably knows primate feet better than anyone on the continent.
Well, and I said one other thing to Meldrum, and we can talk about Bigfoot. We'll get to the wing stuff in a minute, but The one thing that I mentioned to Meldrum, and you just brought it up right there, to me, well, there's the footage. That's the first thing. But the second thing, really the ace in the hole for not only Patterson, but the entire Bigfoot researching community is Gimlin. Because Gimlin believes, Gimlin's telling the truth. And the reason why I'm saying if it was a hoax, and then he was, he was hoaxed, because he believes what happened. And so he has never, he hasn't changed anything, because it went down the way it went down. Now, if it was a hoax and everybody's acting and so forth, and they brought Gimlin along for the ride so he could participate in the hoax as an unwitting, participant.
Yeah.
But he was not, if it was a hoax, then he was not part of it. And that's why I think Gimlin is one of the best parts about this entire story. In other words, nobody could have put it together. Gimlin would have known it was BS from the beginning. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I've had the opportunity to meet with and speak with Bob Gimlin on 2 occasions, and a more credible witness you could not produce.
Exactly.
He's a very down-to-earth, honest person, and very experienced tracker and woodsman, so a keen observer too. And he is still convinced to this day, has never wavered from that belief that what they encountered was he didn't even believe the thing existed. When he went out with Patterson, he was just kind of going along for the ride and humoring his buddy.
Right.
So when they wrote up on the thing, it basically shook the foundation of his reality. It was like, holy crap, this thing is real.
And if it would have been a hoax, and one of the things that I don't think is talked about enough, Gimlin was armed. And if they were sitting there trying to pull off a hoax, somebody's lucky they didn't get shot in the back. Do you understand? I'm serious about that. He was there. He was doing his job. He was there to protect, just in case something happened, and it did. And luckily, nobody got shot. Oh, I just got an email. Check this out. I got to read this to you. It's pretty funny. Let me click back here. Hi, Jimmy. If Rick, talking about Dyer, if Rick has shot Bigfoot, is that really anything to be proud of? What does that tell you about him? I find it disgusting, killing a sentient being to make a buck.
Yeah.
That's actually the world's greatest Bigfoot hunter, and he's out there shooting him. Yeah, exactly. I just thought you'd find that funny.
It is, and it's been an ongoing controversy in the Bigfoot field for years, whether, they obviously are sentient beings, very, very probably closely related to humans, or much closer than anything else that lives on the planet currently. So, is that a moral risk that we want to take in terms of killing something like that? There are some that feel that that's the only way that we will prove they're real, but it's definitely a heated debate within a very polarizing debate within the Bigfoot community.
This question just came in from one of the listeners. Of all the real-life animals you've researched that actually exist in nature, which was the most unusual or memorable, and why?
So they're saying real-life things that I've investigated, because I don't really investigate those too much. Safely admit.
That actually exist in nature.
Okay. Well, I've seen some really amazing animals in the wild. That's something that I've had an opportunity to do. I can say one of the coolest things I've ever experienced was I was on the Galapagos Islands and kind of walking around and exploring by myself, and suddenly this enormous bull elephant seal came out of the water right next to me in this little watering hole and snorted and roared at me. And we're talking about an animal that's probably about 20 feet long. It's as big as a boxcar,
Right.
And to be that close to an animal like that and have it vocalize at me, and that was something I'll never forget. And the power of nature became extremely evident to me at that moment.
One time when I was in the jungles down in Panama, which, the thickest, gnarliest, nastiest jungle that you can imagine, that type of growth, you literally need a machete in front of you, whack, whack, whack. Well, me and my friends are on this trail, and it's at night. And to our left and to our right is literally, 50 miles, 100 miles of jungle with things in there that you just don't want to meet. Okay. And it's at night. And you hear strange sounds all the time. And so you get used to that. And there's monkeys in the trees, and there's all kinds of, things out eating things. It's jungle life. But we were walking in the jungle one night, and off to our left in the dark, I would say by the sound of it, maybe 5 meters, maybe 10 meters deep, and not very far, were footsteps going crunch, 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 crunch in while we were walking. And you could hear it. And then when we stopped, it would stop. And then we would walk it, crunch, crunch, something huge. But you couldn't see it because it's blackness. It was the freakiest thing. And whatever it was pacing with us. And we ended up running and leaving it. But this went on for like 30 minutes, crunch, 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 crunch. But we never saw it. And it was obviously big because we could hear what our feet were doing, as 150-pound, adults. What our feet were doing, and listening to this over into the jungle. And it sounded like, and this is what we're talking about later, any of my friends listening, call in. It sounded like it was on 2 feet. Yeah. And we never saw it. We kept stopping and looking, we never saw it, but we could hear it. And it would start and stop a little bit after us, a little bit before us. We could pace along with it. Now, okay, so let's get to the winged stuff. What is a winged humanoid? Your definition, because I think it could go off into 20 tangents. What's your definition of a winged humanoid, and when did this first start to get recorded?
Well, my new book, Encounters of Flying Humanoids, actually depicts a variety of different types of flying humanoids. Now, we'll talk about winged humanoids first, since you mentioned those specifically. A winged humanoid is an anthropomorphic being, meaning that it possesses the characteristics of a human and also an animal, in this case, a bird or a bat or something along those lines. The descriptions vary widely. Of course, the most iconic of these is probably the Mothman of West Virginia, which is a main focus of my book because it's very well known, very well documented case. But essentially, a winged humanoid is something that is a zoological impossibility. Evolution just doesn't happen that way, and these descriptions of human-like figures with wings really more akin to figures that we find in different folklores and mythologies around the world, as opposed to anything that we could ever expect to find in the fossil history. So that's the first thing. As a cryptozoologist, this was a little bit outside my comfort zone getting into this territory because, traditionally cryptozoology is based around the fossil history and the natural world as we know it.
Right.
And this is not something that's akin to that, in my opinion. As far as my interest in this, now, again, going back to my childhood, my mother used to regale me with stories of all types of fabulous creatures, and she used to really, really like to talk about the West Virginia Mothman, as she called it. That was one of her favorite stories. So I was always interested in the Mothman, and as I got older, read the iconic book, The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, and other books on the subject. But my personal interest in investigations into flying humanoids happened starting in 2009. I had already written a book about flying cryptids, but more specifically the traditional Thunderbird types of cryptids, which we can talk about if you like. But around that time period in 2009, I was asked by the producers of a TV show called Monster Quest to go down to Mexico and investigate accounts of flying humanoid creatures down there. And really learned a lot of cool things, and we mounted an investigation and so forth. And about a year after that, I was up in Point Pleasant, West Virginia for the first time, fulfilling a lifelong dream as part of the sci-fi TV show Weird or What with William Shatner. We did a Mothman investigation up there. Well, a funny thing happens, Jimmy, when you appear on television shows. People get in touch with you, and they track you down and they email you, and I started collecting all of these accounts, unpublished accounts from different people around the country who claimed they had seen similar types of flying humanoids. And many of these cases I investigated personally. I interviewed the eyewitnesses and found them to be very credible people who had remarkable and inexplicable experiences.
People that obviously didn't know each other.
Yes, exactly. As far as I know, no
right.
drop.
Well, let me just ask you with your trip to Mexico and what they were seeing down there. You're making your notes. You're investigating. When you went back to Point Pleasant, which is for everybody out there, that's the historical Mothman center of the world. When you went back to Point, were there things similar between Mexico and the United States? Forget about everything else, but when you were at Point Pleasant, where you just went, whoa, hold on a minute here, because we're talking about geographically, not only two different countries, but a long distance apart, and probably not a whole lot of communication between Point Pleasant and Mexico. So was it dramatic, or was there anything at all?
Well, there were some similarities, but with regard to the Mexican cases, that particular investigation was kind of a mixed bag. There were recent accounts of something that resembled Mothman in northern Mexico. There were many videotapes that we were shown of these other types of flying humanoids that are kind of floating around up in the stratosphere that evidently did not have wings or anything. They just looked like human-shaped figures kind of flying freely through the air. And there was a police officer that I interviewed who claimed that his patrol car had been attacked by what he described as a flying witch. So that was kind of all kinds of weirdness on that particular thing. And with regard to Mothman, we have a pretty defined model as far as what the Mothman supposedly looked like. It is a very cold case. I mean, there are some recent reports, but most of the Mothman sightings were logged in the years 1966 and 67. And in that time span, there were literally dozens or perhaps even 100 or so Mothman reports, and the descriptions were very, very remarkably similar. The similarities I found, and I guess we're going to be stepping backwards maybe into your first hour here, because Bill would probably like this, but the similarities I found were that hotbeds of UFO activity seem to surround all of these cases.
Including Mothman?
Oh, yeah.
66 and 67?
Yes. At the time when Mothman was being reported, there were many, many accounts, and many of them published in local newspapers around Point Pleasant, of strange lights in the sky. And so there was obviously a connection drawn at that point that they were somehow related to Mothman's appearance. And we all know that Mexico has really been a hotbed of UFO activity since, well, maybe 2000 or before.
Right. But
so that that's kind of one recurring theme that I've found.
When you said it went cold, was that after the Silver Bridge collapse? Did it go cold after that?
Oh yeah, and that's a big part of the story, and
I think so too.
We definitely need to mention it specifically, in order to pay respect and homage to 46 people that lost their lives in a tragic accident. And the people that I spoke to in Point Pleasant are still very much affected by that particular incident. But in December 15th, 1967, the bridge collapsed, and sightings of the Mothman, for all intents and purposes, ceased after that.
Yes, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but take us back before that. Take us back to 1966, and how things started to come to a boil, and obviously ended in 1967. And you're absolutely right, 46 people. It was tragic, but very strange coincidence, if it is a coincidence, if you know what I'm saying. So take us back to 1966. How did things start? And, well, let's just go there. Let's start there.
Well, on November 15th, 1966 was the first really accepted sighting of the Mothman. And on that particular cold night, there were two young couples who were driving through an area known as the TNT area. And the reason it's called the TNT area is because back during World War II, they were manufacturing TNT and explosives for the war effort in this particular location, and it's eerily dotted by all these concrete storage igloos where they would store the TNT and other explosives. But by 1966, the area was closed down, abandoned, and it was basically a hangout for local teenagers. So two young couples, Linda and Roger Scarberry, Steve and Mary Mallett, were driving through the area when they claimed they had a sighting of this Mothman figure, and they described it as being about 6.5 feet tall, very sturdy man-like legs and a man-like body, with two giant bat-like wings attached to its back and shoulders, and it didn't really seem to have a head, but they noticed the most startling feature was they noticed it had these giant red glowing eyes, and they described these eyes as being almost hypnotic, and they were transfixed. When they had gathered their senses, they shot off out of the area, and to their horror and chagrin, the Mothman actually took off and chased them, apparently, at speeds approaching 100 miles an hour. And they finally lost it when they got to the edge of Point Pleasant. And they were so, of course, terrified by this encounter that they went to the local sheriff's office and filed a report. It made big news the following morning. The sheriff had a press conference, and it made national and international news, as something like the Mothman you would expect that it might. And so that kind of started the whole process. And for the next year or so, there were many, many sightings logged by people in and around Point Pleasant, and also
weren't
south
there
in Charleston.
What? And again, I don't have notes in front of me, so if I'm wrong, you can correct me. That's fine. Wasn't there grave diggers or something? There was also a sighting too as well that happened that like corroborated their story. I could be wrong.
No, you are. I'm very impressed, Jimmy. There were some grave diggers in an area named Clenendon, West Virginia, which is not directly next to Point Pleasant, but kind of in the middle part of the state, who claimed that a strange winged figure flew over their heads, and I believe this was either weeks or just a month or so before the sighting that I just described.
Sorry, I was getting a Coke. I was reaching into the refrigerator. Sorry, I didn't think you were going to cut off. Hold on for a second. I might as well finish what I started. Okay. Sorry, everybody. But, it's hot. I'm thirsty. And Ken got to the point. He got in and out. Here, I'm going to mute the mic while I open this can. Hold on. Okay, now we can move forward. It's hot in here, man. So, okay, so now are all of the reports the same? Did the guys working at the graveyard, did they do the same red eye thing? I studied the Mothman a couple of years ago, and certainly after the movie came out, I really got into it hard and heavy. And I wanted the movie to be better than it was. But anyway, I got into it pretty hard and heavy. So were the descriptions the same coming in from everybody? Was it because the community was small and everybody heard, you know what I mean? Like the telephone game, everybody, listening to the rumors on the street, or were they coming in from different people that weren't affiliated from each other, but actually, given the same description?
Well, it's hard to say, of course, because most of the information we have comes via newspaper articles from the time, and also John Keel in his writings. But the gravediggers did not see the red eyes. They didn't actually get a good look at whatever it was that flew over. It happened so fast. But there are some other accounts that are very remarkably similar. For example, the night after the Scarberry Mallet sighting, a woman named Martella Bennett had literally a face-to-face encounter with the Mothman. It rose up behind a car she was getting out of, and she actually collapsed on top of her infant child and almost smothered it to death because she was apparently so terrified, and she remarked on the glowing red eyes, I believe. There were also a few other cases that were similar in terms of Mothman taking off and chasing cars. So that seems to be a recurring theme. It seemed to, for whatever reason, to really want to chase and terrify and interact with humans, though it never actually physically accosted anyone that I'm aware of. With
things like a family movie like Wizard of Oz, okay, the scariest part of that movie, we know what it is, the flying monkeys. Oh, yeah. And it's just one of those things that all the depictions of Satan and Antichrist and this description of Mothman, and it's an image that just scares the crap out of anybody. And I can't imagine what was going on in Point Pleasant then, and everybody in town is seeing something. I can't imagine anything more terrifying. And I hope you respect what I'm saying, because it's just so out there. But it's also the one thing that would scare anybody to death, And if you're sitting there talking to a 4-year-old kid, you really want to scare them, show them Wizard of Oz, or tell them about flying humans, and that's what was going on in Point Pleasant.
Yeah, and so it's easy to understand why some people have labeled the Mothman as kind of a demonic entity of some kind. But let's go back, because you had asked me about these flying humanoids in antiquity a little while ago, and we didn't really talk about that. There are references to creatures dating back over 2 millennia. If you look at the ancient Sumerians, they worshiped these beings known as the Apkallu or Abgal, which were basically winged humanoid figures and demigods, so to speak. Many other examples as you go around the world. Pazuzu, the wind demon of ancient Assyria. Japan has a creature known as the Tengu. The Hindus and Buddhists of Asia worship something called Garuda. Even in the Americas, the ancient Maya had a deity known as Kamazotz, or Zotz the death bat, which was basically a man-like creature with bat-like wings. And the list goes on and on. So, I mean, there are these recurring themes of these creatures dating back centuries in different cultures all over the world. And the concept is definitely the same, which is that these creatures are to be greatly feared, that they are harbingers of death, omens of cataclysmic events, and so forth.
I have a quick question. It's actually what you're talking about. This has come in from Devin. Regarding an old Art Bell with Bonnie Crystal, she mentioned in one of her spelunking adventures seeing a recently made reptile-like footprints in mud that were about fist size and suggested a reptile 36 inches tall or that was bipedal. Any findings or further thoughts on this? So it's obviously something cryptozoological. Say it for me.
Cryptozoological.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well,
36
lizard men, reptoids, or reptilian humanoids. Very similar to what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
Again, anthropomorphic. You have these hybrids between man and beast. You could also throw mermaids into the mix, or werewolves, or any of these creatures that are kind of zoological impossibilities. I'm not familiar with that particular case, but I'll go ahead and give a quick plug to my colleague Lyle Blackburn, who just wrote a book called The Lizard Man, and he does discuss some of it. And you can find other references, to these reptilian humanoid type creatures that have been seen in different parts of the world. So
now going back to your pictures in the gallery. So as we go back into antiquity, out of these 8 that you have seen, which is the oldest one? These 8 pictures that you have sent. I just want some type of reference.
I believe I sent you a picture of Pazuzu,
which is the one on the right. Or no, that's the Batman
holding his arm up. Yeah,
Pazuzu's picture number 1. Okay,
yeah,
so
Pazuzu, and I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with a movie called The Exorcist. So Pazuzu was kind of the antagonist in The Exorcist, and they find the statue at the beginning of the movie, but Pazuzu was a real creature, or I guess, again, demigod or something that was worshipped by the ancient Assyrians, and it was associated with famine and pestilence and different things like that.
Right.
And it was greatly feared, and still greatly feared. So that one dates back quite a ways, probably close to 2 millennia, somewhere around there.
Where do you think, when you look at something like this, and I say this all the time, somebody is seeing something, and when you go back to ancient antiquity, when we are going back to Sumerian times, then when somebody takes the time back then, because you're always foraging for food, you're trying to eat, you're trying to stay warm, you're trying to stay cool, you're thinking about survival. The last thing you think about doing is have the time to create some artwork or to carve into a wall, or to, that's a luxury. So if you take it a step further and you do something like this and you reference something like this, it's because you've seen something and you want to record it.
Well, that's a very sound theory, Jimmy. I agree with you. Documentation of things that are important. And, I didn't send you an image, but I should go ahead and point out that in my book I reference a figure known as the Birdman of Lascaux. And in the famous Lascaux caves in France, where they found, hundreds of these images that were were drawn or painted by, prehistoric men. There is a figure known as the Birdman, which is basically, it's not winged, but it's basically a human-like form with a bird's head. And, it's placed along lots of known animals like wild horses and buffaloes and things. So it's a little bit out of context, but, it's been carbon-dated as, over 17,000 years old.
Yeah, that's right. And that particular, the Birdman, that particular one, when they took the time to, in almost 3D, by the way, drawing buffalo, drawing horses, and other things that are perfectly represented, and you know what they are, and then the Birdman just sits out like, wait a minute, they saw something. They had to. Why else are they capturing it on the wall? And it's 20,000 years old. It's. I totally agree with you. Let's go to. Really quick. I wanted everybody to take a look at the Mothman. There, I have a couple of different pictures of it here, but the one that you sent, this is in downtown Point Pleasant, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they have a statue in downtown Point Pleasant, and although many of the people that I spoke to in Point Pleasant didn't really seem like they wanted to talk about the Mothman, I can imagine that they've been sort of beaten to death. And again, there's a very negative association with the bridge collapse tragedy. However, they've also embraced Mothman as part of the local culture, and hence the stylized statue. And they do, in fact, have a Mothman festival every year, every September. There's a museum, a Mothman museum, Main Street downtown, and there are different gift shops. They're selling books and T-shirts and things like that. So, they've embraced it. I don't think they're necessarily trying. Well, I can't say the community is purposely trying to capitalize on it. Obviously, a few individuals are, but it's ingrained in the culture there, and so that they've memorialized it with that statue.
So after the Sumerian times, where did it pop up next? Flying humanoids, the demon. I mean, would it have been the Bible? Angels. I'm referring to angels, and
there are references to angels in the Bible, of course. What I found, and I'm certainly not a biblical expert, but what I found in my research of the book was that references to angels having wings are virtually non-existent in the Bible. I think that's more of a development that occurred in Renaissance times as artists like Leonardo da Vinci began to depict angels as winged beings. However, there is the famous story of Ezekiel. And, in the Old Testament, Ezekiel, the Hebrew prophet, claimed that he encountered this flying craft known as the Merkabah, and 4 beings emerged from this craft, and they were winged, and they were flying. They had 4 wings, and each was described as having 4 faces, the face of a lion, an eagle, an ox, and a human. And they were known as the Chayot, or Chayot. So that's probably the only biblical reference that I've found that might refer to some of these flying humanoid creatures.
Do you have the website open? Are you looking at it?
I have to.
Okay, the picture number 3, I'll skip over the sideways Ken and Demon. Encounters Flying Humanoids, which is... what am I? I'm looking at the title. That's your book. But the picture next to that one is the Biggs Road. What is this?
The Biggs Road.
Briggs Road. Man Bad on Briggs Road.
Man Bad on Briggs Road. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a fairly recent case. That occurred in 2006, I believe. And the incident occurred up at a place called Holman, Wisconsin, which is just outside La Crosse, Wisconsin. And this particular case was investigated by one of my colleagues, Linda Godfrey, who's written a number of books on modern werewolf reports and different things. But apparently these 2 gentlemen of Native American descent were driving home one evening near Holman when they claimed that their pickup truck was dive-bombed by this horrible human bat creature. They called it the man bat, and they actually described it as looking like one of the vampires out of, maybe like the Van Helsing movie or Bram Stoker's Dracula or something. But it was basically this bat-like wings, human-like figure, very hairy and scary, very sharp teeth. And as it dive-bombed the windshield of their car, it emitted this horrific shrieking noise. and then it took off out of sight, and a few moments later, both men became violently ill. They had actually had to pull over to the side of the road, and strangely enough, they claimed that when they got home, that they experienced all kinds of weird things there. Their dog was cowering under the bed for no apparent reason. They were hearing strange noises around the house and experiencing poltergeist activity and stuff like that. So, that's an example of I guess, a modern case that I guess would bear some relationship or some similarities to the Mothman cases. And, the whole point of that, of course, is to illustrate that this is an ongoing phenomenon. It's something, as we mentioned, that goes back centuries, and it's something that is continuing. It didn't end in 1967.
I don't want to stop with these pictures. I want to continue because I find them fascinating. What is the Owlman plate?
Owlman is probably the second most famous flying humanoid after the Mothman. It is essentially the English version of Mothman. It's a great story, actually. I think Owlman's one of my favorite mysterious creatures. Most of the sightings of Owlman occurred back in the year 1976 in a very specific area. And the area is around an old church known as Maunan Church, which is in southern Cornwall, right on the coast of southern England. And in the woods around this old church, several young women described seeing this Owlman creature who was about 5 feet tall, unlike Mothman, described as kind of having either feathers or a kind of a furry gray covering, large glowing eyes like the Mothman, no beak. It actually had a kind of a black scowling grimace on its face, and it also had these black crab-like pincers for legs. And so there were a handful of sightings of this Owlman figure back in 1976, and perhaps one sighting as recently as 1988. No others that I'm really aware of. But some similarities again. The glowing eyes, of course, the physical description to some extent, and moreover, just the fact that this creature appeared and just utterly terrified these different eyewitnesses that encountered it.
Back to my point at the beginning of when I brought you on, it's the one thing. It's the one thing that'll just scare you. Is this? It's the one thing. I don't care. I mean, nothing really gets me going, but the thought of a flying humanoid in any situation is probably the most terrifying thing that you could think of. Now, this Frank Ramirez flying human,
eyewitness sketch, yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And everybody needs to look at this. Okay, go ahead. Tell us about this drawing.
Well, Frank Ramirez is one of the people that got in touch with me to relay his flying humanoid experience. And Frank actually lives here in San Antonio, Texas, where I live, so I've gotten to know him very well. I've interviewed him many times. And, again, extremely credible person, but someone who's really been affected throughout his whole life by this experience. And you can really see that it's had a profound impact on him. And he's also an artist, so he's attempted to sketch and draw this thing different ways in order to, in a kind of a therapeutic way. But back in 1998, when he was a young man, he was living at his mother's house in the south side of San Antonio, and one night he heard something moving around in his backyard, and when he went out to investigate...
How old was he?
He was, I believe he was like 18 to 20, I think he said, basically getting out of high school, going into college. Early 20s, that's right. So he made out this large figure on the roof of his mother's garage, and as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he could see that it was rising up and unfurling enormous wings. And it was a moonlit night, and there were also some floodlights in the backyard, so he was able to make out its face, and basically what he's drawn there is what he described. He said that it had a very long face. Its jaw was basically stretched down to a point almost kind of the shape of a long beak or a long bill of a bird, and had very black eyes, and the whole thing he basically said that it was blacker than any black that you could possibly imagine. I mean, just by staring into a black hole almost. And as this thing rose up over him, he understandably fled, ran out of the yard and ran down the street and eventually collapsed. And, by the time he returned, of course, this thing was gone. And so for many years, he didn't really want to talk about this for many years, but, I guess those were close to him and his family knew about it. So anyways.
Did he have another visit?
No, just the one time incident.
Just the one time?
Yeah.
And what is therapeutic about this drawing? Because this is what nightmares are made of. What is therapeutic about it?
Well, I certainly can't pretend to walk in Frank's shoes, but I can imagine that, people that have had traumatic experiences, and of course they have to deal with the post-traumatic issues that result from that. And so in a way, Frank was perhaps felt that he might be able to convey or communicate what he experienced to other people by, basically putting it down on paper and, illustrating what a terrifying apparition this thing was and why it affected him such.
Exactly, because he's obviously a very talented artist. I mean, that is, you can see that. But what that also tells me is he knows what he's drawing, and he can get it done. So if this is what he saw something very, 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 very frightening. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Actually,
it's emblazoned in his memory, and he's drawn many, many sketches, and they're all very similar. Now, one quick sidebar here. There was a sighting of a creature in Mexico in 2009 in the Chihuahua state of Mexico, and we investigated this, before the Monster Quest episode. There's an eyewitness sketch from that particular case that looks almost identical. So here you have a corroborating eyewitness sketch from Mexico in 2009, about 11 years after Frank's experience. Chihuahua, Mexico is not as far from San Antonio as you might imagine. We were talking about maybe a few hundred miles southwest.
Right.
And I don't think there's any way Frank, because, he drew these sketches long before 2009. So, interesting connection there.
There are no coincidences. That's the way. That is a crazy shot. I mean, a crazy drawing. And I want to get back to Mothman, but what have you seen? Has there been? Obviously, you've probably had a few different experiences. We probably don't have enough time to go into all of them, but has there been an experience that has stopped you and realized that you were maybe on the right track?
Well, people, of course, always ask me if I've ever seen any of these cryptids that I investigate, and I never really have. But I would say that the most remarkable experience that I've had, and we'll have to go back to Bigfoot here for a moment, but I've always been highly skeptical and highly objective, and I still am to this day. And I just, hopefully people will appreciate and understand that the field of cryptozoology is based on real science and real zoology, and many of the researchers that are involved in it, we actually do take a very methodical, scientific approach. We don't necessarily accept everything as real. Oftentimes we try to debunk, we try to explain things in practical terms. But back in 2003, maybe 2002, 2003, I was up in North Texas at a remote area known as Little Cottonwood Lake, and I was investigating some Bigfoot activity along with some other researchers. Something had been scaring campers out of the woods there. That's what we were told. And just after dark, we were kind of hiking around the lake, and suddenly we heard these remarkable sounds. And I actually had a video camera running at the moment, so even when it was very dark, I was able to record the audio. But these sounds, I'll never forget them. Very deep, loud, thunderous, guttural panting or grunting noises. And immediately thought primate. And I've heard, like you, Jimmy, I've been down in the jungles of Central America. I've heard black howler monkeys. I've heard other primates in the wild, and these were primate sounds, but much, much louder.
Close? Were they close by?
They were very close by, probably about 40 or 50 yards away in some thick brush that we couldn't get into. We did not see anything that night. We heard these noises, and we were all, convinced that what we heard was something remarkable. The following morning, we we finally made our way through this thick cut because we weren't going to go through there at night.
Right.
And the following morning, we made it through to this location where we'd heard this thing, and it was on a small beach. And on the beach, there were some deep tracks, and it was very muddy, so the tracks weren't very distinct. They were just impressions. And the other thing that was really, really strange there were several large turtle shells that had been ripped in half cleanly from top to bottom and completely scraped clean of all the tissue and flesh and meat. And they were just kind of thrown around into a pile. And I can tell you from my years of wildlife research that there is no known animal, there's no human that is capable of ripping a turtle shell in half, tearing it like a piece of paper in half. And
how big were they?
They were, I would say that these shells were probably like anywhere from a foot, to maybe 14, 15 inches long. I mean, they were, good-sized turtles if you're familiar with, like, red-eared slider turtles and painted turtles. Some of the bigger ones you'll see out in lakes and ponds. I mean, they were big, big, big animals. But all of that together was, to me, fairly compelling.
Have you talked to anybody else, maybe at a university, about? I mean, what would be a natural predator to a turtle? I can't think of any, but that would, eat a turtle in that fashion. I can't think of anything.
No, there's nothing, and there's nothing in North America. There's certainly nothing in the woods of North Texas. And there
I've
are
never seen
animals that will.
I've never seen a turtle shell ripped in half, old or new, or wow.
Yeah, now think about that, Jimmy. A piece of paper just ripped from top to bottom in two halves, dissected like that. And, so I don't know. And I did find another case, unrelated case in Texas where a gentleman had found a similar pile of turtle shells in association with a Bigfoot sighting. So that was something that I found out long after this had happened, but that was kind of a bell went off.
Well, we'll probably get an email in a second. So anybody listening, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com, if you have ever heard of a natural predator for a turtle that would eat a turtle in that fashion, turtle soup, I get that, but if you know what I mean. But wow, no, I've never, ever, ever heard of that. And if you're talking about something that's a foot and a half across, that's huge. And you're talking about superhuman strength.
And in association with these vocalizations coming from the same location. So,
Okay, now why do you think, or where do all of these connect? And also, and I'm talking about the same, Mothman going back to the Sumerian times, the same descriptions, but do you think it could be related to maybe reptiles, dragons? Is there a similarity there?
Well, that's the $1 million question. I guess, I certainly don't want to give too much information out because I want people to buy the book and kind of draw their own conclusions.
Oh, okay.
I think this is the kind of mystery that everyone's going to have a different perspective and interpretation of because it really does have a lot to do with belief systems. And I'll say this, the one conclusion that I think I've already made is that Mothman and creatures like Mothman are not flesh and blood creatures that evolved on this planet in the way that we know it. So from there, I guess you could go any number of directions. There are people, of course, that are often asking me about interdimensional possibilities, if you believe that type of thing. And I think it's theoretically it's been proven as possible that there are other dimensions and planes of existence and reality, and sometimes windows open or wires get crossed. Time travelers, there are people that are very spiritual and religious are going to say that these are demonic manifestations of some kind or spirit beings. And then there's the extraterrestrial question, because as we already discussed, there have been accounts of UFOs and strange lights in the sky that are associated. And of course, the Men in Black were a big part of the Mothman mystery. That's when, I think Men in Black made the first big splash was in and around Point Pleasant, and many of the eyewitnesses who encountered Mothman claimed that these mysterious Men in Black came to their door and basically threatened them and told them, to shut up and not talk about it. So conspiracies, mutations. I mean, there's so many different theories. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around it, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And the thing is, when you read about any of this and you study it, even at a very superficial level, you see the similarities there. You see how things are connected from different civilizations that did not communicate with each other either via time, hundreds or thousands of years apart. And that's the first thing. Second, continents apart. Vast distances, language issues, but yet they are seeing the very same thing. And you just have to ask yourself, what is it that they are seeing? It's one thing now when you look at society today, because we can go to any movie theater and see something on the screen. And somebody in Russia or Africa can see the very same movie and have something burned into their brain. But when you're talking about 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and everybody's seeing the same thing, carving, painting, talking about, writing about the very same thing, there was something to it. There has to be. And I draw the same conclusion. I make the same relation to dragons. Mm-hmm. I really do. And I'm sorry to to blow your book out of the water, but if you're writing about it, I'm thinking about it. It's the way that it is, and that's just the way that I look at it.
Absolutely. And since we're on the subject of dragons, I mean, I'd like to point out that there were actually animals in our fossil history that we can find, creatures that looked remarkably like dragons. So the whole notion of a flying reptilian creature with bat-like wings and this long snake-like tail, that animal existed. It was known as a Rhamphorhynchus. It was a pterosaur, a flying reptile that was contemporary with the dinosaurs, 100 million to 65 million years ago. So, that's kind of always been the theory with some of these modern dragon or even medieval dragon legends, is that, there might be a possibility, albeit remote, that there could be a small surviving pocket of these pterosaurs living in some remote area.
Yeah, you can't say exactly. You can't say that would be a remote idea, because we didn't know about dinosaurs until very, 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 very recently. And for dragons to be part of myths and mythology going back 1,500 years, 1,000 years to the Middle Ages, where to me, somebody was seeing something. Maybe not alive then, but their ancestors did, and they spoke about it when they had no idea what a Tyrannosaurus Rex looked like or what reptiles looked. Am I making sense? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
Yeah, they were seeing something. And again, it all goes back to it's for me, it's one of the most terrifying things that you can imagine. And if I'm running down the street in a nightmare, I'm being chased by Mothman. That's the truth. Okay, so let's, if you don't mind, let's go back now that we've taken it all full circle. Let's go back to the Mothman story, and let's take it right up to the bridge. And I almost feel bad that you brought up the Men in Black, because I wanted that woven into the actual story. But so let's get back to leading up to the tragic bridge collapse. And again, there are no coincidences. And for everybody there in Point Pleasant, I don't know if, well, I'll let you tell the story. But for me, I don't know if the bridge collapse was a Mothman cause, or it was the end of the Mothman presence there. But it was certainly added, again, we're talking about 46 people that died, but it added credibility to the story. And I hate to look at it that way, but the facts are the facts.
Well, the motif that, John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies book, and we really have to pay a lot of attention to Keel because he spent close to a year in the area around Point Pleasant, got to know the eyewitnesses very well, and really was closer to the events that were happening at that time than anyone else. And, we mentioned the first sighting of Mothman that really made news was November 15, 1966, followed by weeks and weeks of Mothman sightings. months of UFO sightings and, Men in Black appearances and things. Well, December 15, 1967, exactly 1 year and 1 day after the Mothman first appeared, it was right before Christmas time in Point Pleasant, and there was a large bridge known as the Silver Bridge over the Ohio River between West Virginia and Ohio. And during rush hour, the bridge collapsed. There was a traffic jam, and it was snowy and icy outside, and the bridge collapsed. And, many, many cars went into the freezing Ohio River, and 46 people drowned. And some bodies were never recovered. And the community was understandably, distraught in an unimaginable way. I mean, Point Pleasant is still a very small, close-knit community, and everybody experienced a loss when that happened, either lost a family member or a friend of the family or somebody knew, pretty much every victim was well known. So, but that, shortly thereafter, the Mothman sightings did seem to cease.
Well, with the premonitions that were involved, was there anybody that came out and mentioned the Silver Bridge before the collapse?
Well, no. Now, John Keel wrote in Mothman Prophecies that he felt that there might be a premonition occurring, but he actually felt that there was going to be an assassination attempt on the president at that time, Lyndon Johnson, or that there was going to be some other worldwide event, and that the Mothman was perhaps symbolic of that. Now, that being said, and bearing in mind that I have the greatest respect for John Keel, I don't think it's fair to necessarily take every single thing that Keel speculated about as the gospel truth, because for a number of reasons that I lay out in the book, and I don't want to get into that too much here. Perhaps he was a little bit close to the things that were going on at that time. But I do have a personal anecdote I'd like to throw in real quick, Jimmy, that I thought was very weird and interesting.
Okay.
When I was flying up to Point Pleasant to film the television show, I was on an airplane next to a gentleman, looked like a young businessman, nice-looking fellow wearing a jacket and so forth. And we were flying into Charleston, West Virginia, and we struck up a conversation at one point, and he asked me where I was headed, and I told him, I'm going up to Point Pleasant. And he said, oh, well, that's interesting. That's where I'm from. And, keep in mind that Point Pleasant is still a very small town, about 3,000 people.
Right.
So I said, oh, wow, that's weird. And he said, well, have you ever heard of the Mothman? And I said, well, yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm flying up there to do a TV show about the Mothman.
Right on.
And that's when he got real quiet and looked at me and said, one of my best childhood friends died in the bridge collapse. So that was pretty weird for me, because it was just one of those coincidences.
How was he? What was it? How was his demeanor? Was he offended that you were going up there to do the story on it? Did he stop talking about it?
Well, he'd brought up the Mothman initially,
right?
And but when he started talking about his friend in the bridge collapse, you could tell that he was kind of getting choked up a little bit. So
right.
I guess it was stirring up some emotions at that point. So I felt it was better to just kind of move on from there and maybe not talk about it too much.
Well, he's been a guest on this show. I consider him a friend, Jerome Clark, and yep, and we talked about Point Pleasant, and he straight out said, everybody, and Jerome Clark, if there's a straight shooter as a researcher on planet Earth, it's that guy. He's not, he's more of a skeptic than he is a believer in all of it. He's a black and white guy, black and white. Said that he believes everybody in Point Pleasant. He believed that they really saw something. And when a guy like Jerome Clark says something like that, it causes you to pause. And, so I have to ask, when you were in Point Pleasant, was it something that you could bring up and as a stranger in town, because they knew, they know everybody in town. They know that you're not from there. So you walk in and you're investigating, you're reporting, you're doing a TV show, whatever. Were they open to the idea, or is it just something that they don't like to remember?
Well, first off, when I was checking into my hotel, which is the famous Lowe Hotel in Point Pleasant, which is apparently haunted as well, I was greeted by the proprietor and owner of the hotel, and he asked me if I was there for the TV shoot, and I said yes, and he said, I'm so tired of people and skeptics coming in here and saying that the Mothman was an owl or something ridiculous like that. He's like, we know what we saw. These people know what they saw, and this was a real apparition. This was something not of this earth. So he was very compelling. Other than that, though, I when I brought up the subject of Mothman with other people around town, it was kind of mixed, kind of a mixed bag. Some people were kind of hesitant to talk about it, uncomfortable. Jeff Walmsley, who runs the local Mothman Museum there, of course, is completely enthralled in the subject, and he loves to, he and everyone at the museum were very helpful. And there was another gentleman named Bob Lowe who passed on recently, unfortunately, very sadly, but he had also investigated the Mothman and had been out to the TNT area many times, and he had some very interesting perspectives on it. He was of Native American ethnicity, and he felt that the Mothman was somehow related to the beliefs of his people and spiritual had spiritual undertones. So lots of different perspectives, but many people in Point Pleasant, I think, are very uncomfortable with the subject because, again, it brings up the whole issue of the bridge collapse, and that's really what they associate the Mothman with, and it's a very tragic thing, and they just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and that, most I want to say this correctly because some of them are friends of mine, but most want to ask questions about that. That's the story that they want to hear. They want to hear about the bridge collapse instead of actually what led up. What was the meat of the story. That, to me, is what's compelling. And as a matter of fact, we've talked about everything tonight around Point Pleasant except for the bridge collapse. And I really don't want to talk about that. And for everybody there, I can understand, and it's just like, oh, here they come again. They want to talk. And I get that. But, trying to get somebody like, Scarberry and Mallet, were you able to, because they were teenagers back then, mm-hmm. Are they still alive? Were you able to talk to them about this?
I was not.
Do they
Linda
talk?
Scarberry and Martella Bennett have both passed on recently when we went up to film. There was another lady who was interviewed who was apparently an eyewitness, but I didn't have an opportunity to talk with her. Now, that being said, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a gentleman named Andy Colvin, if you've ever had him on. Andy is the author of several books, and he refers to himself as the Mothman's photographer because he believes he captured an image of the Mothman when he was young. But he did a lot of research and spent a lot of time interviewing Linda Scarberry, Martella Bennett, and other people some of the original Mothman eyewitnesses.
What was his name again?
Andy Colvin.
Oh, I thought okay, not Lauren Coleman.
No, Andy Colvin.
Okay.
And he has, and I discuss his research in the book, of course, and he did actually turn up some interesting nuggets of information that John Keel had either misrepresented or, well, I don't want to really say it like that, but there's some contradictory things and kind of some other aspects, as far as how they had been affected throughout the course of their lives by this mystery. So, But I never had the opportunity to talk to them. Linda Scarberry, to her credit, was interviewed several times for different television shows, interviewed by Lauren Coleman and possibly Jerry Clark as well. I'm not sure, but She was always very forthcoming and very willing to cooperate. Other Mothman witnesses, not so much. It was something they basically wanted to put in their past, understandably so.
Now, speaking of Lauren Coleman, who I think is the man, by the way, have you been up to Bridgewater? The Bridgewater Triangle?
No, I have not. I was at a conference in Massachusetts with Lauren years ago, but we actually did not make it up to the Bridgewater area. We were close to that, but no, I've heard many of the stories and accounts.
Have you checked out the documentary that's out now?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I'll get you hooked up with that. You've got to watch the Bridgewater Triangle. And Lauren's in the documentary a little bit. I mean, I respect him a lot, but what is going on up there, that might be your next book. But I got to tell you, there is the weird thing for me with Bridgewater, and I'm sure you've heard all the same stories, but It's the oversized snakes. It's the oversized birds. It's Bigfoot. It's murder. And you know what I mean? There's everything that can go wrong in a county is going wrong in Bridgewater. And the scary part about it, I've had those guys on the show, and I've seen the documentary a few times. Everything that is in that documentary is real. It's based on fact. And that is one of the craziest places in America. And the thing is, well, I just said it. It's here. It's in the United States. This isn't, you can go there and visit, you know, and I remind everybody of that fact all the time. This isn't down at the tip of South America, or this isn't out in the desert in the Sahara. This is a place where you can just pack up the car and go and drive to, and it's right here. And the list of stuff that goes down there, and as far as cryptozoology goes, I would think, you know, everybody, well, you know, that's why Lauren lives there too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Many great stories coming out of that area, as you mentioned. Many cryptids, black panthers, thunderbirds, giant snakes, Bigfoot, UFOs. Definitely seems to be an active window area, and it's on my bucket list, no doubt.
Yeah, and like I said, then you throw in things like, you know, human sacrifices, animal sacrifices. It's just like, what is going on there? And it's all been documented. That's the scary part. It's different if it's a friend of a friend of a friend, you know, telling a story around a campfire about the hook in the car door. You know, okay, all right. But no, it's really going down in Bridgewater. It really is. Okay, so now, really quick, thank you, by the way. Great conversation tonight. Great conversation. You're going to be in town, aren't you?
Yes, I'm actually going to be up there doing a lecture on April 15th. A good friend of ours, Steve Murillo, has invited me up to speak to his group. And so, yeah, I'm excited. It's actually my first West Coast lecture, so I'm looking forward to, if you have anyone who's in the greater LA area who is interested in flying humanoids, and that's what I'll be lecturing about, and I'd be happy to discuss other weirdness as well. So
with Steve's group that he has put together, I hang out there. I've done shows there too myself, but he really does it right. And the members of his group, it's called UPARS.
UPARS.
Very smart, a very smart bunch of people. And I'm excited, and I can't wait to come out, not only hear you speak, but, you know, we can hang out in person and do it. But it's going to be great, and I just can't wait till you're here. And it's what now? Let's see. Is it 2 weeks from Tuesday?
Tuesday, April 15th. So as soon as the listeners get their taxes filed, I would suggest that they head directly up to the meeting and put all that tax nonsense behind them, and we'll get into some good flying humanoid conversation instead.
Right on. And everybody knows, you just go to jimmychurchradio.com, just click on Ken's name right there, are the links that'll take you to his new book. And as well as we always post the UPAR stuff up on our website. So, and I'll talk about it as we're leading up, because I like the radio, everybody that listens to the show, to come out and meet me and hang out and talk. And it's just always a good time over there. So I'm really looking forward to it, Ken.
Oh, I'm excited too. I'm excited to meet you and Steve and Alex and the rest. And it should be a great time.
Yeah, Alex is a trip. All right. Well, hey, thank you very much. The links are up. And if there's anything else you need, get a hold of us, and I'll see you in exactly 2 weeks from yesterday.
Awesome, Jimmy. Well, thanks again for having me on. Terrific conversation, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Doors always open, Ken.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who listened in.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All righty. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
All right. That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm going to take a quick break. I need a break after 2.5 hours of conversation, and I will be back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Shoot me an email, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com, Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. You know what to do. Follow us on Twitter @JChurchRadio. A lot of action tonight. I'll be back right after this.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? My name's Brian Taylor, Ninja Badass Extraordinaire, and this is JimmyChurchRadio.com.
JJCR in your face.
JimmyChurchRadio.com on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right. Fade to black. JimmyChurchRadio.com, the Dark Matter Radio Network. Shoot us an email, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter. A couple of things I wanted to get caught up on really quick. I wanted to read this email that came in tonight before the show. Are you ready? Hi. Was Plane 370 abducted with a time travel technology weapon? I heard two excellent physics say they couldn't get a hit on the plane and it felt, or psychics, I'm sorry, physics. Psychics say that they couldn't get a hit on the plane and it felt like the plane was hidden or veiled. Why couldn't they get a hit or fix on the plane unless it isn't in our time space, or is it in another parallel universe? They say somebody called a cell phone on the plane and the phone registered the call and that it hung up. How could this happen? Perhaps someone has developed a type of quantum communication, because the visitors have told me the way to communicate through dimensions is governed by quantum laws, if you see my reasoning. Recently, science got the confirmation and solid proof that we live in a multiverse. And now we have the situation with Ukraine. Was a demonstration of secret weapon used to dissuade the certain parties from engaging in some type of action? It started to look like a very plausible explanation. When I was contemplating this, I had a very strange experience. I was at an intersection, and the light was green, so I looked one more time to make sure before proceeding, and without any explanation, the light was just red without turning yellow first. And if I hadn't have looked, which I did for some reason, I would have been in an accident with an oncoming car, but the whole thing was surreal. It was as if I popped into another slightly different parallel universe, and I remembered it, and for a few seconds I did seem a little foggy, and then quickly readjusted and went on my way. Coincidence or not, I personally think not. Now, back to my point, and thank you for that. Name withheld. I'm on the verge of agreeing with the said correspondence. I don't get how in our modern society that a Boeing 777 can vanish from the face of the earth. I have no idea. And as time goes on, we will find out what happened. But as time goes on and the longer that this drags on, the more that you and I start to fill in the blanks for ourselves. Again, I don't understand, and I am completely confused. And it causes me, dear listener, to let my mind wander. And I'm not the only one. And let me make this point perfectly clear to everybody. Silence from anybody that is involved in this investigation, in this search. Silence and inaccuracies and what words are spoken about it are then corrected and fixed again. As long as that continues, that causes all of us to let our imagination wander. And now it seems to me, and I read this email to you because I've gotten a lot of email like this. And it is causing, and I'm speaking to anybody out there that would possibly have something to do with this investigation, to listen. You need to speak, and we need to find out. Because as long as my imagination wanders and tries to fill in the blanks, so is everybody else's, and including those for the families of those on that plane. I don't understand the silence unless there's something dark. And if it is as simple as a plane crash, a malfunction, mechanical, how about a hijacking? How about a gun to the head of a pilot, a suicidal pilot? If it's any of those answers, if that is the truth, tell us. It's okay. We can deal with it. But unless we hear the truth and we find that plane, then it's sinister and it's dark and it's not going to get better. And for anybody out there that's thinking twisted thoughts, this allows them to be validated. And for them to stand up and say, see, I told you so. This thing has to get solved. And I don't care how it gets done. Every day that goes by, I cannot believe that we are sitting here on April 2nd, going into the 4th week, and we have absolutely nothing. Every broadcast that I have done over the last month has started with the same thing. Today we know nothing. Yesterday we know nothing. How is it possible? Unless there's darkness. My friends, I just don't get it. I really don't. I'm hoping every single day that I am able to come on the show the next day with some kind of news where I feel sane again and that it isn't darkness and it's not sinister. It was just a hijacking. And as crazy as it sounds, that would be good news. I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. All right. Now, tomorrow, John Major Jenkins. And got a couple surprises tomorrow with John. John Major Jenkins tomorrow. What is the truth with 2012? What really happened? Not only that, what didn't happen? We're going to find out tomorrow. I can't believe he agreed to come on this show and set the record straight. Because if there's anybody that knows, it is John Major Jenkins. I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. Stay tuned. Coming up next, we have Night Watch with host Todd Sheets and like 45 other guests, hosts, and a room full of people that I don't know all their names. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Komarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music, you're listening to him right now. You listen to him all night. It's Doug Aldrich of Whitesnake. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm Jimmy Church. We'll see you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.